Hello everyone, can you see me? Say hello if you can see me. Oh, I think you can see me now. So hi everyone, thank you Bihu. Hi everyone. So today we are going to talk about some literary movements. Now one thing that I did not mention is that these literary movements is going to be an excellent way to cover history of English literature and to an extent European literature. Of course, to an extent means that we'll cover it in a different way. We will also cover a lot of MCQs based on things that we study, so things are solidified in your mind. Now, when I say we are going to cover literary movements, I don't mean like we're going to go through a list. There are about 153 literary movements in English literature that we need to know. And today, what we are going to do is we are going to go through the first third of them, about 40 plus of them, and then we'll cover them in the next stream or maybe the next couple of streams. So, uh, I'll also interact with you guys. Hi Kartika, hi Shivani, nice to see you guys. What about others, our students? Hi Sonali. So can you guys tell me if you have a favorite literary movement? Hello, uh, Datta, I'll call you Dattatreya. Do you guys have a favorite literary movement? Like this movement I really like. Any literary movement or school that this is something that you find fun. Hello Urmila. Modernism, same Datta. Modernism is my favorite. I cannot show it to you right now, but I have a big poster of T.S. Eliot behind me. What about others? Do you have any favorite literary movements? Hi Yashwanti, how's it going? Modernism for Hudatu, postmodernism for Pihu. Postmodernism, I also like postmodernism a lot. Absurdism for Kartika. Absurdism, Dhananjay talked a little bit about absurdism, but of course, uh, uh, it's Dhananjay, right? We can always have cooler teachers doing this, which will be me soon, not right now. Today we'll go up to pre-romantics. I like absurdism a lot too. Now, absurdism in literature is very different from absurdism as a philosophy, right? Which is not the case with a lot of other movements like existentialism. But structuralism, Ishani structuralism, is not a literary movement. It is a it is a literary movement too. Structuralism was a whole thing, right? It affected humanities at large. So structuralism was affecting psychology. Structuralism was affecting literature. So structuralism was affecting literary theory. It was affecting anthropology. It was affecting political science. It was affecting everything, right? Structuralism was all over the place. So keep telling me what your favorite literary or movements or schools are, and we'll start with our discussion today. Right, of course, I would like you guys to also participate and tell me more if you know things, because again, we are going to talk about 40 things today, and the rest we'll talk about later. So if there are 40 things, there's only so much we can talk about. So first we'll start with classicism. This is not the first movement in British literature as such, but this is the movement which comes which sorry refers to very old things, right? Like Greco-Roman culture. So can someone tell me uh, in which ages in English literature do we see classicism? In which ages do we see classicism? Yet, as you answer, I'll go ahead. So, classicism is a literary and aesthetic movement, and of course, classicism is a larger way of looking at the world, right? Which develops into Renaissance. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Which comes from Greece and Rome. So, the writers of classicism believed that the Greek and the Roman writers जो थे Is it fine if I'm bilingual here, if I use both Hindi and English? Let me know. So the writers जो ग्रीस और रोम में थे, उनकी जो forms थी लिखने की, like there are 5 acts, this is how each act is structured, this is the kind of relationship a character will have to the plot, this is the kind of language which will be used, this is the kind of metaphors that will be used, and this is the kind of structural meter will be used, right? Ki, if somebody is saying something tragic, they will say it in a particular rhythm of language. And of course, what the themes are, right? Themes regarding human psychology, themes regarding fate, themes regarding heroism and honor. All of those themes also take prominence, uh, for the classicists and neoclassicists. Now, classicism and neoclassicism are mentioned here differently. Who will tell me the difference between classicism and neoclassicism? Admirable Lychee, I love that username. Good evening, Drishti Manwani from Rajasthan. Among many net channels, Lit Odyssey has its own distinct identity. The quality, passion, and intellectual depth of your sessions are so impressive. Thank you so much, Drishti. I think we are going to go into a lot of depth in this session as well. Even though we have a lot to cover, we never cover things, in a superficial way. That is just an insult sometimes to the subject. So classicism and neoclassicism are given different terms primarily because of the way in which classicism is done and in which neoclassicism is done. Neoclassical writers like Alexander Pope, John Dryden, Ben Jonson, Samuel Johnson, uh, these earlier writers, right, up to the pre-romantics, they believed that we are going to bring back the classical rules, the classical decorum, and we are going to write literature in a way which actually imitates nature, right? Here the nature word is keyword, and I'll talk a little bit about it in a second. But classicism is a different breed altogether. Can you name some classicists, not neoclassicists? Can you name some classicists? I'll wait for a second. I'll see if you guys are able to name some classicists. Can you name some people who we would call classicists? Not neoclassicists, right? Alexander Pope, Ben Jonson, and to an extent John Dryden are neoclassical writers. Who are classicists? And in which age do we see them a lot? Of course, we see them every now and then, but they dominate in a particular age. Homer is a classical writer, right? He's a Hellenic writer. Virgil is also a classical writer. So the classical writers like Virgil, Homer, Sophocles, Euripides, Aeschylus, Aristophanes, Seneca, these are the foundation of neoclassicism, right? What they were doing was not classicism, right? Classicism is named after them. So in English literature, who practices classicism, not neoclassicism? Ovid is there too among the classicals. Hey Himangi, no, Aristotle is also a classical thinker, right? He's a Greek thinker. I'm asking about the English writers who are classicists. I think because you guys have not answered yet, you'll be a little bit surprised to find out that the classicists are T.S. Eliot and James Joyce. These are two of the most prominent classicists in English literature, Eliot and Joyce. In fact, T.S. Eliot in an essay called James Joyce a classicist, and James Joyce really loved that description of his work. So the classicism is more ethical and more metaphysical than neoclassicism. Classicism very often says that we are going to not only take the rules and ways of doing art, but the whole worldview and the entire relationship that human beings have to the world should be learned from the classical writers like Homer. That's why for Eliot, Homer is important. And what book did James Joyce write? He wrote Ulysses. Ulysses is his work, his greatest work of classicism, right? It's probably the greatest work of classicism in English. What was he doing? He was trying to understand the contemporary issues through the framework of the Odyssey of Homer. Yeah, there is more, but let's just keep going into this. Neoclassicism is in 17th and 18th century in England, and it is a revival of the old forms. It was against the Renaissance. right? So of course every movement responds to the movement before it in some way or the other. So Renaissance had a few things which were issues for the classicals, neoclassicals. Renaissance was about individualism, right? During the Renaissance, before the Renaissance, I'm sorry, चर्च था, चर्च पढ़ाता था कि बाइबल की टीचिंग्स क्या है, and everyone would follow it. The works that Chaucer has written, think about pre-Renaissance literature जो कि चौसर ने लिखा है, let's say. चौसर के वर्क में what do we have? We have Book of the Duchess, we have Parliament of Fowls or Fools, and we have of course the Canterbury Tales. अब Canterbury Tales एक estate satire है. Canterbury Tales में even though Chaucer as a character exist करता है, Chaucer is not expressing his individuality. Right, so before Renaissance, individuality was not central to literature and literary expression. There are no personal lyrics. There are some, but they are not important. We'll look at the some personal lyrics that exist in a second. We'll read some of the lines as well. That will help you a lot. Now, in Chaucer, we did not have this. In the Renaissance, during the English Renaissance, another thing that happens is the Protestant Reformation. Reformation ने क्या कहा था कि चर्च नहीं सिखाएगा, हम खुद बाइबल को पढ़ेंगे और हम खुद समझेंगे कि बाइबल का इंटरप्रिटेशन क्या है. तो एट द वेरी कोर जो प्रोटेस्टेंट रिफॉर्मेशन था वो ये कह रहा था कि तुम इंडिविजुअली भी भगवान तक पहुंच सकते हो. तो उस सोशियो पॉलिटिकल लैंडस्केप में जो लिटरेचर है वो काफी इंडिविजुअलिस्टिक था. तो उसमें जो हीरोज थे, हीरोज लाइक मैकबेथ, हीरोज लाइक डॉक्टर फॉस्टस, है ना, characters, the poetic personas in Astrophil and Stella and Amority by Spencer, Astrophil and Stella by Sidney. जो वॉइस थी वो कैसी थी? वो काफी इंडिविजुअलिस्टिक थी, पर्सनल फीलिंग्स की ज्यादा बात हो रही थी एज अपोज टू सोशल ऑर्डर, एज अपोज टू क्लासिकल स्टोरीज, राइट? चौसर ने क्या लिखा था? ट्रॉयलस एंड क्रेसिडा, व्हिच इज अ क्लासिकल स्टोरी, राइट? वो अपनी इमोशंस की बात नहीं कर रहा था. अब अगर मैं अपनी भावनाओं की बात कर रहा हूं और मैं ड्रामा लिख रहा हूं, अपनी भावनाओं के इन द सेंस कि किसी पर्सन की भावनाओं की बात कर रहा हूं एकदम इंडिविजुअलिस्टिक तरीके से, और मैं लिटरेचर लिख रहा हूं, तो वेरी ऑफन जो होता था विच इज कि जो टेक्स्ट था वो ओवरफ्लो करता था इमोशंस के साथ, इवेंट्स के साथ. और ओवरफ्लो इज द ऑपोजिट ऑफ ऑर्डर, राइट? जब इंडिविजुअल आइडेंटिटी ओवरफ्लो करेगी किसी वर्क में तो ऑर्डर को मेंटेन करना मुश्किल होगा. तो जो रेनेसांस के दौरान, जो रेनेसांस के ड्यूरेशन में, इंग्लिश रेनेसांस के ड्यूरेशन में जो प्लेज लिखे गए थे, फॉर एग्जांपल, जो कि सेंट्रल टेक्स्ट है, प्लेज मोस्टली ड्रामा सबसे सेंट्रल है ना, वो 5 एक्ट स्ट्रक्चर फॉलो करते थे. वो कुछ हद तक मेट्रिकल ब्लैंक वर्ड्स को भी यूज करते थे, बट उसके अलावा जो ओवरफ्लो था वो बहुत था, है ना. सबसे बेस्ट एग्जांपल हैमलेट है, वो बहुत बड़ा प्ले है, काफी सारे इवेंट्स हो रहे होते हैं, यूनिटी ऑफ टाइम नहीं है, यूनिटी ऑफ प्लेस नहीं है, यूनिटी ऑफ एक्शन थोड़ा बहुत है ना. यूनिटी ऑफ एक्शन शेक्सपियर में जनरल होता है. तो जो ओवरफ्लो ऑफ इंडिविजुअलिज्म था और एक्सप्रेशनिज्म था, उससे इशू था नियो क्लासिकल राइटर्स को. नियो क्लासिसिज्म को एक और तरीके से समझा जा सकता है, वो ये है कि नियो क्लासिसिज्म जब पीक कर रहा था उससे जस्ट पहले क्या पॉलिटिकल मूवमेंट हुआ था, कौन मुझे पॉलिटिकल इवेंट हुआ था? कौन सा पॉलिटिकल इवेंट था जिसके बाद नियो क्लासिसिज्म सेंट्रल हो गया था? कौन बताएगा मुझको फटाफट? मैं तुम्हें एक हिंट देता हूं, इट हैज समथिंग टू डू विद ऑर्डर. नियो क्लासिसिज्म से पहले हुआ था सिविल वॉर, इंग्लिश सिविल वॉर. इंग्लिश सिविल वॉर में बहुत ज्यादा ऑपोजिट ऑफ ऑर्डर था, है ना. बहुत सारा केओस था, बहुत सारी फाइटिंग थी, यू कुड नॉट ट्रस्ट पीपल, देयर वर स्पाइज एंड देयर वाज अ लॉट ऑफ पॉलिटिकल इंस्टेबिलिटी. अगर पॉलिटिकल इंस्टेबिलिटी है तो उस टाइम के बाद का जो लिटरेचर था वो करेक्टिव लिटरेचर बन गया था कि कैसे हम पॉलिटिकल इंस्टेबिलिटी से दूर जाएं, कैसे हम चीजों को थोड़ा कंट्रोल में रखें, कैसे हम सोसाइटी में डेकोरम मेंटेन करें. इसलिए अराउंड दिस टाइम सटायर्स ही बहुत आ जाते हैं कि ऐसा मत करो वैसा मत करो, जो सटायर्स करते हैं. एनीवे, सो लेट्स क्विकली लुक एट दीस 3 पॉइंट्स. One important thing for neoclassical writers was mimesis and nature. Mimesis is imitation of nature, and nature यहाँ पे is not पेड़ पौधे. Nature in neoclassicism is human nature, is the order of the universe. It's not nature of the romantics. So very definition of nature changes from neoclassicism to romanticism. Anyway, let's move on. They believe कि जो ancient writers थे उन्होंने जो laws of nature थे उसको काफी अच्छे समझ लिया था, और यहाँ मॉडर्न से उनका मतलब है neoclassical writers. और हमें, क्योंकि हम नेचर को समझ के भी लिख सकते हैं, जो कि शेक्सपियर ने किया था ड्रैडन के हिसाब से, कि उसने नियो क्लासिकल तरीके से नहीं लिखा था पर नेचर को खुद समझता था. पर हम एंशियंट राइटर्स को ना स्टडी करके और उनके मॉडल्स को, उनके वेज ऑफ राइटिंग को अगर अडॉप्ट करेंगे तो हम भी नेचर को इमिटेट करेंगे। नेचर यानी कि जो लार्जर हायरार्किकल ऑर्डर है यूनिवर्स का, और जो ह्यूमन साइकी का ऑर्डर है। When I said larger hierarchical order है, इसका मतलब ये भी है द आइडिया ऑफ फेट, द आइडिया ऑफ ड्यूटी, ऑल ऑफ दोज थिंग्स, वो भी इमिटेशन ऑफ नेचर है। नॉट डेकोरम और ऑर्डर बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट था। डेकोरम का मतलब ये होता है कि कुछ सर्टेन अप्रोप्रिएट तरीका है लिटरेचर को लिखने का, कि किस तरीके के कैरेक्टर्स होंगे उसमें, किस तरीके की भाषा यूज होगी उसमें, किस तरीके का सब्जेक्ट मैटर होगा, और किस तरीके के वर्ड्स लिखे जाएंगे। तो अगर न्यू क्लासिकल एज के राइट वर्क्स का एक कीवर्ड है तो वो क्या है? हीरोइक कपलेट, है ना, आयम्बिक पेंटामीटर की दो लाइनें जो राइम करती हैं। अगर हीरोइक कपलेट इतना सेंट्रल है, विच सेज कि जो उस टाइम के राइटर्स थे वो काफी फोकस कर रहे थे कि हमारे जो टेक्निकल एस्पेक्ट्स हैं वो डेकोरम के अकॉर्डिंग हो। अब डेकोरम जो था वो क्लासिकल्स के अलग था, राइट। वो टेक्टाइलिक हेक्सामीटर में लिखते थे क्लासिकल्स, कई बार डिथ्रैम्बिक मीटर्स में लिखते थे कई बार। इनके नाम जानने जरूरी है ज्यादा, क्योंकि ये ग्रीक लैंग्वेज में तो हम समझ नहीं पाएंगे। पर अगर तुम सुनोगे किसी को रिसाइट करते हो तो तुम सुनोगे कि कैसा साउंड करता है। डेक्टालिक साउंड ऐसा करता है, डम डा डम डा डम डा डम डा डम डा डम डा। दिस इज व्हाट समव्हाट डेक्टालिक हेक्सामीटर साउंड्स लाइक। एनीवे, तो ये अप्रोप्रिएटनेस काफी इंपॉर्टेंट थी। उसके अलावा वो थ्री यूनिटीज में बहुत मानते थे। थ्री यूनिटीज थी, यूनिटीज ऑफ टाइम, यूनिटीज ऑफ प्लेस और यूनिटीज ऑफ एक्शन। ना यूनिटी ऑफ टाइम, प्लेस और एक्शन हम एरिस्टोटल को प्रिस्क्राइब करते हैं यूजुअली, पर जो ये टर्म्स है ये एक्चुअली कोडिफाई हुई थी फ्रेंच न्यू क्लासिसिज्म में। न्यू क्लासिसिज्म फ्रांस में पहले हुआ था, तो वहां के जो क्रिटिक्स थे जैसे बोलियू, दिस इज एन इंपॉर्टेंट नेम, उसने कोडिफाई किया था थ्री यूनिटीज को प्राइमरीली। इटली में भी हुआ था ऑफकोर्स। यूनिटी ऑफ टाइम ये कहता है कि जो चीजें हो रही है ना स्टेज पे, वो टोटल ड्यूरेशन 12 से 24 घंटे, समटाइम्स 8 to 24 आवर्स भी होता है, उस ड्यूरेशन में होनी चाहिए। यानी कि जो प्ले के इवेंट्स है वो काफी लंबे नहीं होने चाहिए। जैसे डॉक्टर फॉस्टर्स में वो बिगिनिंग करता है, वो सीख रहा होता है डार्क आर्ट्स को, एंड बाय द एंड 24 ईयर्स बीत चुके होते हैं। तो प्ले की स्टोरी के अंदर 24 साल बीत गए। दैट इज अ वायलेशन ऑफ द यूनिटी ऑफ टाइम। हैमलेट में वो इंग्लैंड जाता है हैमलेट, है ना, इंग्लैंड से लौट के आता है, वो सब कुछ हो जाता है और प्ले चल ही रहा होता है, तो उसमें भी काफी कुछ दिन बीत जाते हैं। तो यूनिटी ऑफ टाइम का बेसिकली आइडिया ये था कि जो तुम्हारे सामने एक्शन हो रहा है तुम उसको इमेजिन कर पा रहे हो कि रियल टाइम में हो रहा है ना। बीच में एक शो आया था, बीच में मतलब बहुत पहले एक शो आया था, तुम सबने देखा ही होगा, उसका अनिल कपूर का 24 नाम था उसका। तो उसमें 24 एपिसोड्स थे 1 घंटे के, और हर एक घंटा 1 घंटे इन रियल टाइम को रिप्रेजेंट करता था। तो वो दैट वाज द परफेक्ट यूनिटी ऑफ टाइम। यूनिटी ऑफ प्लेस भी होती है। यूनिटी ऑफ प्लेस का मतलब ये है कि जो प्ले के इवेंट्स हो रहे हैं वो एक ही जगह पे हो रहे हैं। तो जो वेटिंग फॉर गॉडो है वो हर एक रूल को ब्रेक करता है एक्सेप्ट यूनिटी ऑफ प्लेस को, क्योंकि जो सेटिंग है वो चेंज नहीं होती वेटिंग फॉर गॉडो में, जो कि एक एब्सर्ड ड्रामा है इन द 20th सेंचुरी। तो यूनिटी ऑफ प्लेस का आइडिया ये था कि अगर मैं बैठा हूं यहाँ पे और मैं स्टेज पे कुछ देख रहा हूं, तो ऐसा ना हो कि कभी मुझे इमेजिन करना पड़ रहा है कि स्टेज एक कोर्ट रूम है लाइक हैमलेट, कभी मुझे इमेजिन करना पड़ेगा कि स्टेज एक ग्रेवयार्ड है, कभी इमेजिन करना पड़ेगा कि स्टेज वो यस स्वामी लाइक जॉयसेस यूलिसीज, बट जॉयसेस यूलिसीज एक नॉवल है। तो प्ले एक्चुअली टाइम में एग्जिस्ट करता है ना, प्ले 2 घंटे का प्ले होगा, पर नॉवल तो 2 घंटे की नहीं होगी। नॉवल तुम कितनी देर में ही पढ़ो, है ना। यूलिसीज भी 24 आवर्स में सेट है ऑन अ पर्टिकुलर डे इन डबलिन। एनीवे, यूनिटी ऑफ प्लेस का मतलब ये है कि जो ऑडियंस है उसको ये एक ही जगह इमेजिन करनी पड़े जब वो प्ले देख रहे हैं। यूनिटी ऑफ एक्शन के कुछ मल्टीपल मीनिंग्स होते हैं, मल्टीपल मीनिंग मतलब मल्टीपल चीजें हैं, बट जो सेंट्रल चीज ये है कि बस एक ही प्लॉट हो, कोई सब प्लॉट ना हो। और जब मैं कहता हूँ कोई सब प्लॉट ना हो तो फर्स्ट थिंग यही आता है कि शेक्सपियर में कितने सारे सब प्लॉट्स हैं। जस्ट लुक एट ट्वेल्थ नाइट, राइट। ओलिविया, सॉरी वायोला जो कि सिज़ेरियो की तरह बन जाती है, और बस व्हाट इज द नेम ऑफ द गाय शी लव्स, और सीनो, उन दोनों की लव स्टोरी है। और सीनो ओलिविया की लव स्टोरी है। मेलवोलियो का सब प्लॉट है, सर टोबी का सब प्लॉट है, उसके भाई सेबेस्टियन और एंटोनियो का सब प्लॉट है। इतने सारे सब प्लॉट्स हैं। इनफैक्ट शेक्सपियर की कॉमेडीज में बहुत सारे सब प्लॉट्स होते हैं। पर यूनिटी ऑफ एक्शन का एक और पार्ट है, और वो ये है कि एक इवेंट के बाद जो दूसरा इवेंट है उनके बीच में यूनिटी होनी चाहिए। यानी कि एक्शन ए के बाद एक्शन बी क्यों हुआ, कुछ वजह होनी चाहिए। तो जैसे शिवेश ने धनंजय को पीटा, ये था एक्शन ए। एक्शन बी था कि धनंजय हॉस्पिटल में, तो धनंजय का हॉस्पिटल में होने की वजह थी बिकॉज शिवेश ने पीटा, इसलिए धनंजय हॉस्पिटल में। ये हुआ एक यूनिफाइड एक्शन। की ऑथर्स हम ऑलरेडी बात कर चुके हैं, कुछ वर्क्स देखे थे, ऑफ ड्रामेटिक पोएजी एंड एसे ऑन ड्रामेटिक पोएजी बाय जॉन ड्राइडन, Alexander Pope's essay on criticism, and Ben Jonson is also neoclassical. He's early neoclassical, right? अब कुछ लाइनें पढ़ते हैं जिससे हमें थोड़ा आइडिया मिलेगा कि इनके बिलीव्स कैसे थे। ये लाइनें essay on criticism by Alexander Pope से, Alexander Pope के essay on criticism से ये लाइनें, first follow nature and your judgment framed by her just standard, which is still the same unerring nature, still divinely bright, one clear, unchanged, and universal light. Life, force, and beauty must to all impart at once the source and end and test of art. So, follow nature, which has remained the same for the whole time. It never makes a mistake. Nature, again, are the larger laws. And it is nature is the clear light of life, of force, and of beauty. Excuse me. And of beauty. Right? And it is the source of art, it is the purpose of art, and it is the test of art. So remember, according to Alexander Pope, nature is source, end, and test of art. So you get an art from nature, and what end of your end means goal. Goal of your art is imitating nature, to actually capture nature, and test of the art is how well you are able to capture nature. वो ऑल्सो इसी टेक्स्ट में ये इंक्लूड करता है ये वेरी फेमस लाइन, दोज रूल्स ऑफ ओल्ड डिस्कवर्ड नॉट डिवाइज्ड आर नेचर स्टिल बट नेचर मेथडाइज्ड, नेचर लाइक लिबर्टी इज बट रिस्ट्रेन्ड बाय सेम लॉज विच फर्स्ट हर सेल्फ ऑर्डेन्ड, विच मीन्स कि जो नेचर है उसके जो रूल्स थे ना, जो रूल्स ऑफ ओल्ड का मतलब है जो क्लासिकल रूल्स थे, जो क्लासिकल राइटर्स के रूल्स थे, वर्जिल के रूल्स थे, जो सोफोक्लीस सेनेका के रूल्स थे, जो ये रूल्स थे ना पुराने राइटर्स के, वो उन्होंने डिस्कवर किए थे, बनाए नहीं थे। तो उन्होंने नेचर को देखा और नेचर में मिले थे रूल्स, दे डिड नॉट मेक दीज रूल्स, राइट? नेचर इज नेचर स्टिल, सॉरी देयर रूल्स आर स्टिल नेचर, तो वो नेचर ही है उनके रूल्स, बट नेचर मेथडाइज्ड, दे मेड अ मेथड आउट ऑफ नेचर, राइट, विच वाज लैकिंग इन द रेनेसांस लिटरेचर. Please tell me if my video is lagging a little bit, and also tell me if that lag is disturbing you. He says nature is restrained by the same laws which nature herself has made. So nature made some laws, and those laws even nature follows. Yeah, those laws are what you need to find. And he says that therefore we should learn from the ancients. He says, learn hence for ancient rules a just esteem. A just means justified or appropriate esteem. To copy nature, a very important line is to copy them. If you want to copy nature, you should copy the old writers. That is new classicism. Give me a thumbs up if you understood, and write down your doubts, and I'll move on. Now, we talked about classicism first because it's rooted in classical literature of Greece and Rome, right? But now we'll move on to the oldest of English literature, which is the Old English heroic tradition. Old English heroic tradition was very different from the heroic tradition in English literature, modern English literature. The heroic works of modern English literature are the plays of Dryden and of that generation, right? But heroism in Old English literature, I think my video is lagging a little bit, but it's fine. I hope you are able to focus. Heroism in Old English literature is different in the sense that there the ideas of honor are present, ideas of loyalty are present, and there is another idea which is idea of being generous. That we'll talk about all of them in a second. Now, these works of Old English literature which followed the heroic tradition centered on social structures of the mead hall. If you remember, Beowulf in the beginning goes to the mead hall. Kartika, is it disturbing? I'm sorry, this lag I don't think can be fixed, and because this is a YouTube live, I'm going to go through with the lecture. Otherwise, I would have recorded it. That there's a lot of personal honor, like there is in Greek tragedy. There is fame, and there are secular obligations over spiritual salvation. Right? Spiritual salvation comes with what? It comes with Christianity in England. Right? Before that, there were secular obligations. Secular obligations, I'll tell you what they are. Let me give you a perfect example. At the end of Beowulf dies fighting a dragon. Now, if he dies fighting a dragon, what does that symbolize? Now there is a very prominent reading of this text that, excuse me, there's a very prominent reading of this text that dragon, what does a dragon do? Dragon lives in a cave or a mountain and has a lot of gold which the dragon has hoarded. Dragon does not want to share the gold. So dragon is a bad ruler. A good ruler is going to fight, get the gold, and then a good ruler is going to share that gold with his people. So dragon is the opposite of a good leader. Right, so let's talk about some key concepts in Old English heroic tradition. Comitatus and loyalty. Comitatus means that the relationship between the lord and his retainers. Lafford, I think it's called, means the lord. And this alphabet is called th and thegans. Thegnas, sorry. Laffords and thegnas, which is lords and retainers. Retainers are the people who support the lord. They have a sense of loyalty. The thegnas will be loyal to the lord, and lord, whatever he wins, will share with everyone. Right? He will give generous gifts of treasure to the people. And if a lord dies, then the thegnas will fight for him, or it is a disgrace already because you let your lord die. Then another idea is of weird or fate. Fate, of course, is a pre-Christian fate, right? That covers everything. I don't think I need to describe fate. And there is weregild. Weregild means vengeance. So example is, if a thegnas lose their lord, it is their duty to fight. If a lord sees something bad happen to his people, again, his people, there are no larger Christian beliefs of justice as such. It's that you are a lord, you have social obligations of fighting people who have harmed you. Now, the most important works of Old English heroic tradition, right? There is also an Old English elegiac tradition, which we'll talk about in a second. The most important work of Old English heroic tradition is Beowulf. Another important poem is the Battle of Maldon. You must have heard of it. Now let's read a scene from Battle of Maldon. So what's happening is that the Battle of Maldons, Maldons, which are East Saxon warriors, Maldon is a place, I think, are fighting Danish invaders. Right? This is something you need to know. If they ask you an Old English question from a lesser known text other than Beowulf, it could be Battle of Maldon. So there are Danish invaders who are winning the battle, and the leader of the East Saxon warriors is dead. Right? The name of the warrior is Barithnoth. Right? He is killed. And his retainer, which means one of his supporters, called Barthwold, tries to tell the people that even though he is lost, we need to fight even more now. And he's going to say that you will always regret not fighting, so you need to keep on fighting. Mind must be harder, heart keener, spirit must be greater as our strength diminishes. That as we grow weaker, them growing weaker is that it's a tough battle and our lord is dead. Here our leader lies all cut down, a good man in the dirt. Right? What a nice line, right? He who thinks to turn away from this battle play will now will always be able to lament it. If you go away, you will always lament it. Similarly, in Beowulf, the character, says that he will fight Grendel, the villain of the first part of the story, the monster, without any weapons. No weapons, therefore, for either this night. Unarmed he shall face me, if face me he dares. And may the divine lord, now this is interesting, right? May the divine lord in his wisdom grant the glory of victory to whichever side he sees fit. So what happened with Beowulf was that the people who preserved it were Christians, even though the text itself was not Christian. Yeah, that's why references to divinity and lord above the earthly lords is there. Now, after Old English heroic tradition, there is Old English elegiac tradition. Now, Old English elegies are found in the Exeter book. So there are 4 manuscripts. Can you name them? All 4 of them? I will name them in a second. But because there is a delay, you can name it as well. There are 4 manuscripts which are found in different places. Exeter is a church, right? The book found in that church is called Exeter book, which has this text of a lot of Old English poems, particularly the elegies. Remember, Exeter is in the elegies. Then there is the Junius manuscript, there is Novel Codex, and there is one more which is N-Town. No, no, not N-Town. Junius, Novel, Exeter, and there is one more. Someone remind me. Now, the ideas that Old English elegies talk about are themes of exile. It could be physical exile or spiritual exile. Themes of loneliness and the destruction of society or magnificent structures. Right? Are you guys able to follow? Death of their families and people of their society, and the fact that they are getting old. Right? The speaker is typically an anhaga. Anhaga is a solitary or lonely wanderer. That should remind you of the most famous Old English elegy, the Wanderer. Right? Or it is an Erdstapa, Junius Exeter Vercelli, I think is the one I forgot. And there is the Novel Codex. Erdstapa, which is Earth Stepper. You see, Erd means earth, Stapa means stepper. So these are the people who are exiled from the mead hall. Mead hall represents celebration, community, and society. And they are sometimes in the freezing hostile sea, sometimes they are just exiled into the wilderness. Now, one of the things that they talk about is transience. I think it's called Lian. Now, transience, Lane, I think. Transience is the simple idea that things go away. Right? Everything that we love, everything that we care about may disappear, will disappear. Right? Now, because these texts were also preserved by Christians, there is very often a stoic Christian realization at the end. Right? That, okay, it's fine, this is how the world is, I cannot be sad about it. In the elegies, there are a lot of kennings. Kennings are central Old English literary devices, which is basically a compound, right? Ronrad means whale road. To call the sea the road that whales take, instead the metaphor would be whale road. That's a kenning, right? Banhus is the bone house, right? Ban is bone, hus is house. Banhus is the bone house, which means the human body. Now, some texts that you need to know. The most important ones are the Wanderer and the Seafarer. There are two more, the Ruin and the Wife's Lament. Right? Let's see if we are going to talk about this. We can actually just move on. One important thing is the ubicent motif. Can someone tell me what ubicent motif is? I'll give you a few seconds and then I'll tell you what it is. I don't know why this lag is happening. Sometimes it goes away though. Ubicent motif basically is the asking of questions. Where are they now? Where have they gone? Where are XYZ? Where is my family? Where is the king I served? Where is the horses? Which is very famous line from the Wanderer. Right? Where has the horse gone? Where are my kindred? Where is the giver of treasure? Where are the benches to bear us? Joys of hall to bring us together. Where are all of these things? This questioning of where are is called ubicent. Right? I think lag is fixed for the most part. Now ये जो ubicent है और जो ये ओबिसेंट सेंटीमेंट है द वॉन्डरर का, ये एक मॉडर्न नहीं, एक रीसेंट राइटर ने, पोस्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 राइटर ने वो किया था, अडेप्ट किया था, जो कि था JRR टोल्किन, जिसने लॉर्ड ऑफ द रिंग्स लिखी है. द लॉर्ड ऑफ द रिंग्स, जो कि JRR टोल्किन एक ओल्ड इंग्लिश स्कॉलर भी था, तो उसने द वॉन्डरर के थीम्स को कॉपी करते हुए, कॉपी या इंस्पायर होते हुए उससे एक पोम लिखी थी, वेयर नाउ इज द हॉर्स एंड द राइडर, which is a very popular ubicent poem. Right? Let's move on to Old English Christian poetry. Old English Christian poetry were poetry which were written in the Old English times, जब Christianity नई नई आ रही थी वहां पे. तो यहाँ पे जो heroic style था पुराने टाइम का और जो Christian theology थी वो मिक्स हो जाती है. So they will look at the Christian hero like Christ not as someone who's sacrificing, not as someone who's passive, not as someone who represents the ideal of meekness or humbleness. Instead, they think of Jesus Christ as a warrior king. Right? So it has the elements of heroic and the Christian. Of course, later that Christ as warrior idea is not prominent. Right? And the disciples of Christ, the people who followed Christ during his time, are called retainers or thegnas, which we talked about a second ago. They have a lot of alliteration, which we have talked about. It's a strong stress meter. The alliterative meter of Old English is something I'll quickly talk about. Alliterative meter of Old English is basically there will be a long line divided by a caesura. Maybe there will be a pause in between. Now on the in the entire line there would be four strong stresses, and at least three of those stresses will be alliterative. They will be alliterations. I'll show you that in a second. Some famous texts of Old English literature which follow the this Christian poetry is Cadman's hymn. Cadman is the oldest existing work of English literature. Cadman's hymn is a Christian hymn, and it is recorded in Bede's ecclesiastical history of the English people. So history of the church basically. Then there's another writer called Sinwulf. Sinwulf or Anonymous, we say this because so Sinwulf is interesting because he's the first writer to sign his name. Right? First writer whose authorship is clear, right, in his own works. Cadman's authorship is also clear, but he did not sign his own work. He did not even publish it. The text which we are talking about is the Dream of the Rood. Rood here is the cross on which Jesus Christ was crucified. So the cross has a dream, and I'll show you what the dream is like. Then the young warrior, God Almighty, stripped himself firm and unflinching. Right, so this is description of a warrior. Right, so they're using the Old English heroic language to talk about the passive sacrifice or the sacrifice of Christ. He climbed upon the cross, brave for many to redeem mankind. Right, that's what Christ did. There are some more poems which I cannot find right now. I was supposed to paste them here, but I guess I forgot. It's fine. Which really capture this, but we'll see it in a second when we look at later text, when we look at Piers Plowman. With that, we're done with Old English literature. One of the most prominent literary movements, I said, but there's a kind of literature that was prevalent in medieval times, was the dream vision. If you have watched my Chaucer lecture, you know a lot about dream visions already. We went into a lot of detail with dream visions. But dream vision is essentially the idea that somebody goes to sleep and has a vision in the dream, and that vision is what the poem is. So the way in which this happens is that the narrator, in the beginning, the narrative sequence is very important. The narrative sequence is that the narrator is introduced in a state of distress. Right? So narrator is facing some issues. Maybe they are sleepless, insomnia, which often happens in Chaucer. And then eventually narrator falls asleep. In Chaucer, what often happens is that the Chaucer's narrator वो कोई बुक पढ़ते हुए सो जाता है, क्योंकि सबने में उस बुक से रिलेटेड कुछ आता है, जो कि सबसे ज्यादा प्रोमिनेंट है पार्लियामेंट द हाउस ऑफ फेम में. वो सो जाता है and he sleeps usually in a nice beautiful place, right, in a garden. उसके बाद सपने में they go to a symbolic and allegorical landscape, like House of Fame is an allegorical landscape. They wake up in a symbolic and allegorical landscape, and there is a guide who appears. It could be an angel, it could be a queen, it could be any kind of personified abstraction, right? Like in the book of the Duchess, there is a knight, right? Although he's not a guide, but he's the only person who appears. एंड देन द ड्रीम के अंदर जो चीजें हो रही है उनका क्लाइमैक्स होता है, इमोशनल क्लाइमैक्स होता है, और जो नरेटर होता है वो उठ जाता है ड्रीम से. राइट, द मोस्ट फेमस ड्रीम poems are by Chaucer, of course, which are the Book of the Duchess and the House of Fame. Right, Parliament of Fools is also a dream poem, I think. Right, correct me if I'm wrong. The Pearl poet, who's also the Gawain poet, wrote Pearl, in which the narrator is lamenting the death of his daughter and goes into a dream. John Lydgate's The Temple of Glass is a dream poem, and Gavin Douglas's The Palace of Honor, or The Palace of Honor, or something like that. Old English mein the last syllable is pronounced, right? This RE is pronounced. Is a dream vision. Right, so for example, we'll look at an example from Pearl now. The dreamer describes his physical separation from his body as his soul departs the quest. So this is what it's like. From that place, now this is the dream. This is happening in the dream. From that place, my spirit ascended after a time. My body remained there on the mound in sleep. So he's sleeping on a mound on a little hill. God's grace, my spirit went on a quest where marvels occur. Right, so there's also in this quest, right? He's going to get a Christian consolation for the death of his daughter. Now another medieval genre, three more medieval genres actually, which are very important, and this is very very important for you to understand for the uh, to understand Renaissance drama, is the mystery cycle. Now one thing that very often students don't know is that the word mystery doesn't mean that there is something hidden, there is something that we don't know, there is intrigue. Instead, the word mystery here means mastery, right? So if, let's say, I teach English literature, you could say I have mastery over English literature. If someone makes, let's say, iron weapons, then they have mastery of a blacksmith. So this is called mystery cycles because there were trade guilds or groups of traders, like blacksmiths, like goldsmiths, and people who sell wool. And these guilds sponsored some pageant wagons, which are these moving stages, and they sponsored the entire plays. And these cycles will go from city to city. There will be a mystery play here which shows story A, and then it will go to city B and will show story A again. And meanwhile, another cart will come and show the story B, and stories will keep going as the pageant wagon goes. It's a wagon stage. Typically, these took place on the feast of Corpus Christi, which is a Christian holiday. Now, what they talked about were the history of the Christian revelation. They talked about the Old Testament and the New Testament, the events of the Old Testament and the New Testament. Right? Creation of the world is Old Testament, Last Judgment and all are in the New Testament. It's also somewhat in the Old Testament. Now, there was a lot of local realism and coarse comedy, which means because it was local people playing, because it was not organized by the church but secular entities like the trade guilds, a lot of vulgar humor sometimes was there, a lot of slang was used, a lot of language of the city was used. They had a topological structure. Topology in literature basically means studying the themes and parallels and creating parallels to the Bible. That's what typology means. Sorry, I said topology, it's typology means. So in the mystery plays, events of the Old Testaments were constructed to show that they foreshadow and parallel the events of the New Testament. So one thing you need to know is Old Testament is the religious book of the Jews. New Testament is the religious book of the Christians. So when you do this, you are saying basically, you are also giving authority to the New Testament. Right now, the most famous example of Old Testament and New Testament narratives paralleling each other is in the Second Shepherd's Play. Second Shepherd's Play is very important. It was written by someone called the Wakefield Master. We'll talk about it in a second. So what happens in this is there are two thieves and they're hiding a lamb, and they put the lamb in a cradle like a baby. Now that idea is that this event happens during the Old Testament times, right? So birth of Christ was also similar. Like Christ is called the Lamb of God. So the fact that they made a lamb into a baby is a way of drawing parallels on the Old Testament. Now the key cycles of plays are the York cycle, the Chester cycle, and the Endtown cycles. There is also a Townley cycle where we have the place called Wakefield, wherein we find the play called the Second Shepherd's Play. And we say that the writer of this is the Wakefield Master. We don't know who the actual writer was. We don't know the name. We are not going to read this. There is a lot of coarse comedy, as we have said. There is a lot of references that new God is going to come, which is going to be Jesus Christ. Rise, gentle shepherds, for now he is born, who shall fetch from the fiend that from Adam was torn. God is made your friend. Now at this morn he promises. So that's the saying that Jesus Christ has born. He will save you. The fiend is Satan. Right? Adam, you know what happens, right? Paradise Lost, all of you must know. There's a revision session. Now on top of the mystery plays were the morality plays. Now the mystery plays are based on biblical themes. Morality plays also had biblical morality, but instead of featuring the characters from the Bible like Jesus Christ, like saints, the morality plays talked about general morality. Right? So they will be very allegorical, but very obviously allegorical, right? They will show you a journey of a character who represents mankind at large. Right? So character has no individuality. Instead, character represents mankind at large, and they represent all of humanity, right? From birth, and the journey that they follow is from birth through temptation and sin to death, and finally to the final judgment. We'll look at an example here. Now, the key, excuse me, the uh, key characteristic of these moralities plays were physical personified abstractions. So science, virtues, vices, all of these things will be personified as characters. This personification also happens in Dr. Faustus, right? When there is a scene which is where there's a dance of the several deadly sins, each sin dances and talks to Faustus. So there you have the inspiration from the morality play tradition. There's also memento mori, which is remember that you shall die. Inevitability of death, that everybody dies, right? So which is of course a very central idea to Christianity, that everybody dies and after your death will be the judgment. And these works were didactic, which means they were highly serious and morally driven. Homiletic means, homilies are these songs that you sing for Christian, to teach Christian virtues. So they sang Christian virtues. Now, some famous morality plays are the Everyman, the Castle of Perseverance, and Mankind. So let's talk a little bit about this scene. It is somewhat important. In Everyman, there is a scene where the protagonist, whose name is Everyman, meets death, right? And he tries to bribe death. Okay, you know what? I'll give you gold, and you just let me go. He says, "O death, thou comest when I had the least in. Pound means money, shalt thou have, and defer this matter till another day." Take some money, I was not ready for this, and come kill me some other day. Now death rejects this. Every man it may not be by no way. I set not by gold, silver, nor riches, ni by pope, emperor, king, duke, ni princes. Right? Riches, princes rhymes. So he says ki nothing can fight death, because death is inevitable, right? That is memento mori. So he says death comes for all. Now at the end, everything that every man had leaves him near death, like the money, the sins, and everything. And the only thing that remains are good deeds. Good deeds is a character, by the way, right? It's a character. It's a allegorical, personified abstraction of all of his good deeds. Your good deeds go with you when you die, which is another way of saying, if you do good deeds, they will stay with you, and during the final judgment, तुम्हें स्वर्ग में जाने का मौका मिलेगा. Or all earthly things are but vanity. Beauty, strength, discretion do man forsake. These be things forsake humans. Foolish friends and kinsmen that fair spake, or flee away, save good deeds. Save means accept good deeds. And that am I. Good deed says, everything has left you now. I am going to be the only thing that will follow you into death's other kingdom, to use T.S. Eliot's phrase from the Hollow Land. Hollow Night. No. Hollow Man. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit... I mix up words a lot. Now, after that, these were going on, right, alongside Chaucer. In the Middle English, also something happens called alliterative revival, which is revival of the poetic method of the Old English literature. There have been no comments, so please tell me, guys, are you able to follow? Any doubts? Anything you'd like to add? Please do comment, students. So, alliterative revival means a sudden re-emergence of the alliterative verse which are described, right? Strong stress, at least three, or rather usually three alliterations. Now the poetic line is not an iambic feat, it does not have end rhyme, but a number of stresses which we'll look at. There's the caesura in the between. There are four main stresses which are called lifts, and the stresses are alliterative, at least three of them. Usually first two stresses are in the first half line, so there's a line, there's caesura, and the line continues. So first two stresses will be there, second two stresses will be there. The first half line is called the A verse, second half line is called the B verse. We have a whole session on this. We had a live session on this, right? It's on the site now. Now, this happened in the northern and midland parts of England. right? And this was a reaction against the French influence. So you should know this: France, the Norman conquest, after the Norman conquest, the French literary form started influencing writers. So this was a protest of sorts against the things that Geoffrey Chaucer mastered. The most famous writer of alliterative revival is William Langland, who wrote Piers Plowman. Of course, there is Pearl Poet or the Gawain Poet, who wrote Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which is also written in the alliterative verse, and Parliament of Three Ages, and Vinier and Vasteneur, whatever that is. Let's look at an example of alliterative verse from Langland's Piers Plowman. Now, the opening of Piers Plowman is something that you need to know. It's an important opening. You should know. Hello, Dhananjay. Hello, Digvijay. In summer season, when soft was the sun, something like soft was the sun. Right? So, in summer season, when soft was the sun. So, the stresses are counted. There are 4 stresses: S, 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 and they're also stress of the same sound. So, it's alliterative stress, and this comma is the caesura. I shoop me in shrouds where as I were asleep. I a sheep were, right? The 3 only. Inhabit as in her hermite unholy of works. Went wide in the world wondrous to hear. Right, so this is the opening. This is the line that you need to know, right? In summer season when soft was the sun. Hello, Gunjita. Right, in Parson's prologue, this is important. In Canterbury Tales, at the end comes the parson, right, who gives a whole, basically a sermon. In the prologue, he attacks the northern and midland style of alliterative verse. He calls it rum rough rough. Rum rough rough because high stress and alliteration. Rum rough rough are stressed and r is alliteration. He says, but trust that well. I am a southern man, right? I'm not from north. I'm not from midland. I'm from south. I cannot gist rum rough rough by letter. Right? He says, I cannot do this by letter. He says, I cannot do rhyme like this. And he says, I'll tell my tale in prose. I will you tell me a tale, my tale in prose. Right? So he gives a prose tale. Now the Pearl Poet is interesting. Pearl Poet has written some texts, we believe, because they are in the same manuscript and they are similar in style, which are Pearl, Cleanliness, Patience, Sir Gawain, and the Green Knight. So the Pearl Poet is also called the Gawain Poet or Gawain Poet. Now this manuscript where all of these things are found is called MS Cotton Nero A.X. Right? The manuscripts have names like this, by the way. Now this is written in complex Northwest Midland dialect, right? And it has a different kind of a form. It has strength of alliterative verse and courtly elegance and rhyming structures. And it has the theological precision of London continental courts. Theological precision, think about, of course, Chaucer. So this is a guy who merged these things, and probably there was just one guy, right, that we know of, because we call it the Gawain poet tradition. And the examples we have are the poems by the Gawain poet, right? Pearl, Cleanliness, Patience, and Gawain and the Green Knight. The works are deeply Christian. They explore human fallibility, necessity of purity, which is in Cleanliness, stoic patience, which is in Patience, and grief, which is in Pearl. Of course, the answer to grief is Christian kind of a stoicism. And of course, chivalry, which is also very interesting. So chivalry is very often not exactly Christian, right? In Christian worlds, it is Christian because it is medieval. But to merge chivalry and patience and purity and grief, this poet was quite interesting, right? But again, there is only one. We are not going to read these lines. You will get access to these notes, of course, but these lines I wish I could read, but again, there are a lot of things to do. Now let's talk of Chaucerian school. There are 2 Chaucerian schools. First are the English Chaucerians, people of England who followed Chaucer. And then there are Scottish Chaucerians, which are people of Scotland who followed Chaucer. Excuse me. So this is a 15th century thing. So right after Chaucer's death, they imitated Chaucer and they innovated. So the particular thing that they imitated was the decasyllabic couplets, right? and the rhyme royal stanza. Rhyme royal stanza is this stanza: A B A B B C C. These are 7 line stanza, rhyme royal, which he learned from Italy. And unlike Chaucer, who was very interesting and very lively, they were also satirical, but they've often had heavy didacticism. So a lot of moral philosophy, right? Very, very moral. Didacticism is a term in English literature we most prominently associate with William Wordsworth, by the way. Their works were lengthy, very moralizing, and very often were complaints against something. Now, one thing that they often did was they talked about how loss of Chaucer dying, is a major loss to English rhetoric and poetry. Right, so these two things is what makes them the Chaucerians. Chaucerians, you could say English Chaucerians. English Chaucerians are John Lydgate, who wrote Siege of Thebes. Now, he wrote Siege of Thebes as an addition to the Canterbury Tales. You need to remember that. And he wrote The Temple of Glass. Thomas Hoccleve wrote The Regiment of Princes and La Male Regale. And Stephen Hawes and John Skelton are also English Chaucerians. Now we'll read a little bit about this. And this is about Chaucer, right? This is from the Siege of Thebes by John Lydgate. By him that was, if I shall not feign, flower of poets throughout all Britain. It's fine. I'll not find poet like Chaucer in all of Britain. Which soothly had most excellence in rhetoric and eloquence. He had the most excellence in rhetoric and eloquence, right? In Regiment of Princes, Thomas Hoccleve laments the loss of Chaucer in these lines. Alas, my worthy master honorable, I guess, this land's very treasure and riches. He is the treasure and riches of our land. Death by death hath harm irreparable. Death by death has done irreparable harm unto us. Doom is done. Here vengeable duress despoil hath his land sweetness, whatever, I don't know. Right? These are the English Chaucerians. Now let's move on to Scottish Chaucerians. Now, can someone give me name of a Scottish Chaucerian? Right? As you do, I'll move on. The Scottish Chaucerians are historically called makers or makers, right? Makars. This is what they called themselves, by the way, and this is what they called Chaucer. They called him a great maker. He adopted Chaucer's forms, but they wrote in Middle Scots, and they wrote in Oriate style. Oriate style means they use a lot of Latin vocabulary, right? Which means they used words from Latin. And there was a lot of realism, right? There is no realism as such in Siege of Thebes. But they wrote about everyday reality, and they wrote in Middle Scots, which is a dialect, and Oriate style, which is Latinate style. They wrote also about the local landscape. So unlike French influence on Chaucer, which made him write about gardens, which made him write about pilgrimages, they wrote about the harsh and biting winter of Scotland, right? Dunbar. Yes, show me. Very good. Now, Dunbar reminds me of my colleague or my assistant Dhananjay, who's dumber than me. Anyway, they were also grotesque. Which other writer which English writer do we associate the term grotesque with? Excuse me. Which English writer do we associate the term grotesque with? Tell me. And they're satirical. The important figures who are Scottish Chaucerians, and this is important, you could get a question from this, is King James the First of Scotland, who is very important, who wrote the King's Squire, right? Introduced this text, by the way, it is important, introduced the rhyme royal stanza to Scotland. A B A B B C C, right? The rhyme royal stanza, 7 lines to Scotland. This is King's Squire. There is Robert Henryson, who wrote the Testament of Cresside. Testament of Cresside is a tragic sequel to Chaucer's Troilus and Cresside. He also wrote moral fables. William Dunbar wrote Lament of the Macaris, or Lament for the Makers, which is the most famous Scottish Chaucerian work, and the Golden Targe. Gavin Douglas is also somewhat important. He wrote the Palace of Honor, which we talked about earlier, and Enniados, which is the first Scottish translation of Virgil's Aeneid, right? Aeneados. In Testament of Cressida, this is not that important, but basically, Robert Henryson, what he does is he condemns Cressida a little bit, which Chaucer himself did not do. Now, moving on, this is important. Lament for the Macaris by William Dunbar. In this, he laments the death of great poets like Chaucer and Lydgate. And he says that they have died and their death makes me worry about death. Fear of death worries me is this line. Timor mortis conturbat me. Timor mortis conturbat me means the fear of death worries me. That fear of death worries me is the uh, refrain of Lament of the Macaris by William Dunbar. It is very important that you remember this. You could get a question. It's a very, very famous line that everyone should know. Now, with that, we are done with the medieval English literature. So what we are going to do next is we are going to do a quiz and you guys will tell me the answers to the questions. Right? This quiz is on our website, theliteraryodyssey.com, and you guys will tell me the answers to the questions, right? I'm not going to tell you the answers. You guys will tell me the answer. Everything is going to be from the material we said. I will wait for a few seconds with every question. If I get no answers, I'm going to try and answer myself. So here is the quiz. Give a thumbs up if you can see the quiz. Let's just read the first one. In Alexander Pope's An Essay on Criticism, the line, those rules of old discovered not devised are nature stilled but nature methodized, suggests that classical rules are arbitrary restriction imposed by ancient authorities. Discovered truths reflecting organic laws of nature. Inventions of French critics such as Beaulieu and Rapin. Rapin, by the way, also contributed to the Unities. Mystical principles derived from Renaissance Neoplatonism. So tell me, Hadia has said B. Very good, Hadia. That's correct. Here is an explanation. All of our MCQs come with explanations. Moving on, the Battle of Maldon, the old retainer Brithwold rallies the troops after death of their leader Brithnoth. This speech exemplifies which central concept of Old English heroic tradition? Tell me. The Ubison motif, which is where are they now? The concept of lane, which is transience of earthly things. The comitatus, which is the obligation of royalty, which is the answer. Or the Christian theme of divine redemption through sacrifice. Right? Brithwold's speech, again the speech is quoted as well, embodies the comitatus code. Right? Ubicent is from the elegiac tradition. This is also from the elegiac tradition. And Battle of Maldon is not Christian because it is secular heroic text, right? It's a part of the Old English heroic tradition. This is not right enough. Match the following works with their respective literary traditions. The Wanderer, The Dream of the Rood, The Second Shepherd's Play, and Everyman. The options are, sorry, the other side of the match the following is mystery cycle drama, Old English elegiac tradition, Old English Christian poetry, and morality play tradition. Who will tell me the answer? Very good. All of you are correct so far. The answer is going to be first, Wanderer is Old English elegy, first ka B. Dream of the Rood is Old English Christian poetry, second ka C. Okay, so this is the answer. Second Shepherd's Play is is mystery cycle, third ka A, and Everyman is a morality play, fourth ka D. That's it. This is the answer. Assertion. In the Dream of the Rood, Christ is portrayed as an eager young warrior who actively climbs the cross. Reason. The Old English Christian poets recast biblical narratives using heroic conventions of Germanic warrior culture to make Christianity culturally accessible. Oh, fourth option wasn't visible. I'm sorry. I have moved on. But let's see. Someone is saying A. Is it for this? Yeah, both are correct, and this is the correct explanation. Moving on, in Ubicent passage, where has the horse gone? Where the king's man? Where the giver of treasure appears in which English poem? Who will answer this? The answer is the Wanderer. Right? The famous Ubicent passage appears in the Wanderer, where solitary exile laments the loss of Lord Kinsman, uh, the joys of the mead hall, and etc. Moving on, in medieval dream tradition, which of the following correctly represents the standard sequence of narrative events? So I'm going to wait for you guys to answer this now. Very good Nithipriya, very good Datta, very good Kartika, very good Sankalp. Hadia, fourth option, we have moved on from that. Who will answer? Kartika said D. Distress, then sleep, then allegorical landscape, then guide appears, then climax, then awakening. That is correct. Kartika, uh, Hadia, Urmila, and Datta. Datta, is that your name? If you'd like me to call you something else, please let me know. In the second shepherd's play, from Townley Cycle, the sheep thief Mark is the name of the character, by the way, hides a stolen sheep in a cradle. This episode is significant because it. What's the correct answer? Hadia said A. Demonstrate allegorical personification of vices and morality plays. No, that's not correct. Why A, guys? The thief has stolen a sheep in a cradle. Who will tell me what it is? No, Karthik, it's not A. It happens in morality plays. So this happens in morality plays, right? This is a miracle play. Illustrate the Ubicent motif of lost. No, Ubicent is Old English. B. Yes, Urmila and Karthika, it is B. It foreshadows the birth of Christ. This is the primary reading of this event. The stolen sheep hidden in the swaddling clothes in the cradle typologically mirrors the birth of Christ, Lamb of God. That typology means this mirroring between biblical themes. Which of the following statements about morality play every man are correct? The protagonist represents all of humanity rather than a specific biblical figure. Good deeds is the only companion who accompanies every man to the grave. The play uses typological belief parallels between Old Testament and the New Testament. Death accepts every man's bribe and grants him a reprieve. The play's central theme is memento mori, even inevitability of death. Which is it? A, B, and E only. That is correct. The typological belief is in miracle plays, not morality plays. And death does not accept the bribe. Right? You can see this here. Right? You can read the explanation if you need to. I don't think you can see it. It won't scroll any further. In summer season, when soft was the sun, I shook me in shrouds as a sheep I were. These are opening lines of which text? Excuse me. Guys, this is the opening lines of. C. Pars Plowman. Correct, Urmila. Very good. In Chaucer's Parson's prologue, Parson declares, "I cannot gist rum rap rough by letter." This statement mocks what? What does it mock? Good, Nitpriya. No, Nitpriya, not C. It is alliterative verse tradition of the North and the Midlands. Right? Rim rap rough is alliteration and stress. Moving on. Which of the following is not a work attributed to the Pearl poet? So Pearl, this is too easy, so I'll just answer this. It's Piers Plowman. Moving on. In Hockley's Regiment of Princes, the poet laments, "Death by death hath harm irreparable unto us done." This is Chaucer. We just talked about this. Let's do this quickly. Dunbar's Lament of the Macaris, the Latin refrain "Timor mortis conturbat me," most closely represents which literary tradition? This is the Dunbar as a Scottish Chaucerian or a maker. Right? Do read the explanation here. Moving on, identify the odd one out based on literary tradition. I'm going to let you guys do this completely. Let's see. Our live numbers have reduced, I think, because now other teachers are live as well. "14B, Testament of Cresside by Robert Henryson." Kartika says C. It is C because Henryson, James first of Scotland, and Dunbar are Scottish Chaucerians, whereas Lydgate is English Chaucerian, right? Final question. Neoclassical 3 unities require drama to confine its action to a single setting, a time frame of 12 to 24 hours, and one central plot. These are the 3 unities, right? These unities are codified primarily by French critics such as Boileau, drawing upon the interpretations of Aristotle's Poetics. So it should be this, because they are both correct, but this is not the correct explanation. But one argument you could make is that the neoclassical unities which were followed because of this. That this is the reason why they were followed, because of this codification. So it could be this too, but this is kind of a reach. So I'm not sure which one the algorithm has selected correct. I'm going to go with this. It could be wrong, right? Or I'll wait for you guys. Nith Priya said A. So I'll go with A. Okay, they have selected this one correct. Okay, that makes sense too. We got all of them right, as you can see here. Let's now move on. Right? So are you guys having fun? Are you guys able to understand? Are you guys able to follow the ideas? Say yes or no or whatever. Is it a do you feel like it's a productive way to revise? All right, good to hear it, guys. Let's move on to the next one. Now, in the early Tudor tradition, Tudors were the kings of the time. There's something called an interlude, which is very, very important. Interlude is important because without the mix of interludes, miracle plays, and morality plays, Renaissance drama would not have existed. Right? It's a dramatic tradition spanning late 15th century and much of 16th century, 1500. A lot of 1500s was interludes were prominent, right? They bridge the gap between medieval drama and the fully fledged Elizabethan theatre, right? Now these were staged by professional troops, so there were people who would do drama as a living, and they would have a playwright with them, and they are performed in halls, courts, and universities, and that is what is important. Unlike medical morality plays, the interludes were played at more private and sometimes secular settings, which is going to be very important. Now, in the interludes, the struggle was not abstract cosmic struggle over a man's soul between vices and virtues and good deeds, but the interludes were topical, which means things which are relevant of that for the time. Excuse me, they were political and they were philosophical, right? All the words you would also associate with William Shakespeare. Of course, the person who is going to master this amalgamation first is going to be Christopher Marlowe. Now they were very meta in the sense that they broke the fourth wall, and sometimes if there's a proper discussion happening, a character will be sitting in the audience, and then the character will stand up from the audience and address the audience and go on the stage. Right? There was also subversion, right? Vices in the interludes presented interludes, right? So the vices were still there. Remember, it's an amalgamation. Vice in the interludes presented sin under the guise of festive holiday games, right? So theft as prank, drunkenness as good cheer. So in the beginning, sinful things will be like, okay, this is fun and all in good games, and eventually it will show that how that sin is ugly and shameful, and what the consequences of the sins are. The key writers of the Tudor interlude tradition are Henry Medwall, who wrote Fulgens and Lucrece, which is the same story as Rape of Lucrece; John Haywood, who wrote the Play of the Weather, and an anonymous text called a text by an anonymous writer called Hick's Corner. Right now, in Fulgens and Lucrece, a character who's called just A, which is interesting. That character is called A. Naming characters is also a way of doing art. If you're naming characters, then you are saying that my character has an individuality. This character is not a abstract theme, but this person just called it A. So right now it was not prominent. He says he is in the crowd, and he comes out and says, "A, for goodness will, what means ye, sirs, to stand so still? Why are you standing so still? Have you not eaten your fill and paid no things therefore?" But the important play is the play of the weather. The play of the weather, which a lot of you must not have heard of, इसमें जॉन हेवुड ने एक कैरेक्टर इंट्रोड्यूस किया है मैरी रिपोर्ट के नाम से. जो मैरी रिपोर्ट है, इसका स्पेशलिटी ये है कि दिस इज द फर्स्ट टाइम जब प्ले के टाइटल में और प्ले के ड्रामेटिक पर्सोना में किसी कैरेक्टर को सीधा वाइस बोला गया है. The first time a character is explicitly designated as vice in a play. This character is Mary Report. Right? Then we move on to humanism. Humanism is the beginning of the Renaissance, right? So around this time, the medieval scholasticism basically meant that all the study that you do is going to be of the Bible. तो द इंटेलेक्चुअल जो क्लाइमेट था तब का वो स्कोलास्टिक था, तो वो बाइबल को ही पढ़ते थे खाली. उसके बाद कुछ लोग आए जिनको हम ह्यूमनिस्ट कहते हैं, उन्होंने कहा था कि हम कुछ और पढ़ेंगे, और उस कुछ और को उन्होंने कहा स्टूडिया ह्यूमैनिटाटिस. स्टूडिया ह्यूमैनिटाटिस में ये सब्जेक्ट्स पढ़ाए जाते थे: ग्रामर, रेटोरिक, लॉजिक, पोइट्री, हिस्ट्री और मॉरल फिलोसफी. सो बाइबल नहीं पढ़ रहे अब ये एंशिएंट ग्रीक फिलोसफी पढ़ रहे हैं, एंशिएंट ग्रीक में रेटरिक पढ़ रहे हैं, एंशिएंट ग्रीक ट्रांसलेशन इनटू लैटिन ऑफ कोर्स में लॉजिक, ग्रामर वगैरह पढ़ रहे हैं. राइट? दे बिलीव कि एजुकेशन और सिविक वर्च्यू से लोग दुनिया बदल सकते हैं, और हम पब्लिक को सर्विस करेंगे और लोग एजुकेटेड हो, तो क्योंकि एजुकेशन से लोगों की मोरल कॉन्शियस बनेगी, लोगों की पर्सनल एलोक्वेंस विच इज रेटरिक बढ़ेगी, और वो समाज को ज्यादा कंट्रीब्यूट कर पाएंगे. उनका ऑल्सो वहां था मुंडस, विच मीन्स द वर्ल्ड. मुंडस मीन्स द वर्ल्ड एज अ स्टेज. वो वर्ल्ड को एक स्टेज की तरह देखते थे, राइट? जहां पे एक स्टेज फॉर डिबेट, अ स्टेज फॉर एक्शन, instead of something that the world has made and we have to just follow. If you think about this, जो medieval social structure था, king है, और उसके बाद lords हैं, feudal lords, और उसके बाद peasants हैं, वहां पे अगर तुम वर्ल्ड को स्टेज की तरह देखते हो तो तुम खेल सकते हो, जिसके बाद मिडिल क्लास जैसी चीजें इमर्ज हो सकती है, जो कि हुई भी थी. और they believed in the rhetoric of anarchia. Anarchia is a vivid description. That's all it is. Anarchia is a vivid description. So their works of art were very imaginative and they sought to reconstruct the world. Right, so this becomes very important for Shakespeare and other drama because you're trying to deconstruct the world, which can be a way to create characters which are more realistic. Now, important works in this domain of humanism are by Sir Thomas More, who wrote Utopia and who wrote a dialogue concerning heresies, and Desiderius Erasmus, who wrote The Praise of Folly, which is the most important work, right? And Adagia. In Utopia, Sir Thomas More कहते हैं, for if you people suffer, now what he's going to say is basically going to say कि the people who do crimes, क्योंकि वो गरीब हैं, वो इसलिए क्राइम करते हैं कि जो सोशल स्ट्रक्चर्स है उनसे गरीबी बनती है और पीपल फोर्स होता है क्राइम करने को. तो यू बेसिकली तुम थीव्स को बनाते हो और फिर तुम थीव्स को पनिश करते हो. फॉर इफ यू सफर योर पीपल टू बी इल एजुकेटेड एंड देयर मैनर्स टू बी करप्टेड फ्रॉम द इन्फेंसी, की बचपन से उनको खराब इन्फ्लुएंस मिल रही है, मतलब एजुकेशन नहीं मिल रही, and then punish them for those crimes which their first education disposed them. What else is to be concluded from this but that you first make thieves and then punish them, right? Excuse me. More also defends the utility of poetry. He says कि poetry important है क्योंकि although poets are with many men taken out for painted words, yet they do much help the judgment. पोएट्स हम सब लोग सोचते हैं सुंदर सुंदर बातें करते हैं, बट पोएट्स जजमेंट में, यानी कि क्या सही है क्या गलत है, ये चुनने में भी हेल्प करते हैं पोएट्स. Right, now moving on to the Renaissance literature. Now you know everything about Renaissance already, but I'll talk a little bit about when it as its relationship to English literature. Now यहाँ पे काफी चीजें हुई थी. क्लासिकल रिवाइवल हुआ था, ग्रीक लिटरेचर मिला था, ग्रीक फिलोसफी मिली थी, सी में एक्सप्लोरेशन हो रही थी, नए लैंड्स ढूंढे जा रहे थे, कोर्ट कल्चर डेवलप हो रहा था काफी ज्यादा, जो कि लोग भी जान पा रहे थे कोर्ट कल्चर के बारे में. इंडिविजुअलिज्म इमर्ज हो रहा था फॉर द रीजंस दैट आई मेंशन्ड अर्लियर, बिकॉज ऑफ द रिफॉर्मेशन, बिकॉज ऑफ द फिलोसफीज ऑफ ग्रीक्स, एंड रिलीजियस शिफ्ट हो रहा था विच इज द रिफॉर्मेशन. सो जो चीजें बहुत प्रोमिनेंट है वो है डायनामिक्स ऑफ कोर्ट कल्चर, राइट? क्योंकि जो राइटर्स थे इस टाइम के वो कई बार किसी रॉयल या फिर किसी लॉर्ड के लिए लिख रहे होते थे, कोई उनका पेट्रन होता था, इसलिए रॉयल फेवर के लिए पोइट्री बहुत ज्यादा पार्टिसिपेट करने लग गई कोर्ट कल्चर के अंदर, है ना? जैसे जो एडमंड स्पेंसर था वो फेरी क्वीन लिख रहा था ताकि उसे कुछ पावर मिले, पर उसे बस कुछ पैसे मिले थे. एस्थेटिक रेंज काफी ज्यादा थी. इट वेंट फ्रॉम प्लेटोनिज्म टू आइडियलिज्म टू रियलिज्म, राइट? काफी टाइप की चीजें थी. इफ यू थिंक अबाउट लेट्स से फेरी क्वीन इज अ वर्क ऑफ Renaissance, and so is Hamlet, but they are nothing alike. A lot of formal experimentation was happening. Can someone tell me the most famous formal experimentation of English literature in the Renaissance? Of course, there are things like English prose develop हो रहा था, ड्रामेटिक ब्लैंक वर्स डेवलप हो रहा था जो कि हेनरी हॉवर्ड ने इंट्रोड्यूस किया था. पर एक और फॉर्मल इन्वेंशन है जो अभी तक प्रेवलेंट है, जो हम अभी भी पढ़ते हैं. वो क्या है फॉर्मल इन्वेंशन रेनेसांस की? वो है ट्रेजी कॉमेडीज. इन द सेंस कि कॉमेडीज जिनमें ट्रेजेडीज जिनमें कॉमिक एलिमेंट्स भी है. ट्रेजी कॉमेडी एग्जैक्टली नहीं कहेंगे, बट सिडनी को ये बिल्कुल नहीं पसंद था. ड्रामेटिक पोएसी वो कहता है कि बकवास है, बट दिस बिकेम द डिफाइनिंग आइडेंटिटी ऑफ इंग्लिश रेनेसांस. Now let's take an example of court culture. This is a sonnet by Sir Thomas White. हम पूरा नहीं पढ़ेंगे. They flee and it also has the courtly romance, right? Courtly romance is something that we have discussed in previous lectures. They flee from me that sometime did me seek, with naked foot stalking within my chamber. Once I've seen them gentle, tame and meek, and now are wild and do not once remember that sometime they have put themselves in danger to take bread at my hand. He said there were people who, because of the courtly culture, would love me a lot, but now that they run away from me and don't even remember. Now another important movement was Euphuism. Euphuism is basically a style of writing जो बहुत पॉपुलर हो गया था 1570s में. Like जैसे आजकल के टाइम में फैंटेसी लिटरेचर और मिथो फिक्शन, यानी कि जैसे अमीश की शिवा ट्रायलॉजी है, गार्डन ऑफ व्हाट इज दैट, पैलेस ऑफ इल्यूजन्स है, राइट, जो कि मिथोलॉजिकल स्टोरीज के बारे में लिखते हैं, वो अभी फेमस है। वैसे उस टाइम पे यूफ्यूजम इज अ स्टाइल ऑफ राइटिंग जो फेमस हो गया था। इसको स्टार्ट किया जॉन लिली ने इन हिज वर्क यूफ्यूज हिज द अनाटमी ऑफ विट एंड यूफ्यूज एंड हिज इंग्लैंड। यूफ्यूज इज अ कैरेक्टर इन दीज टेक्स्ट। ना यूफ्यूजम का जो इंपॉर्टेंट है, ये तीन कीवर्ड्स तुमको याद रखने हैं। पहला स्ट्रक्चरल बैलेंस होता है। जो सेंटेंस होगा वो बैलेंस्ड होगा, उसमें अपोजिंग आइडियाज होंगे या फिर अपोजिंग स्ट्रक्चर्स होंगे। और जो क्लॉज लेंथ है, जो लेंथ ऑफ क्लॉज है सेंटेंस में, दोनों तरफ वो बराबर होगी। इस क्लॉज लेंथ बराबर होने कहते हैं आइसोकोलॉन। कई बार एलिट्रेशन भी होता है। एक और चीज होगी कि यूजुअली जो क्लासिकल अथॉरिटी है उसको बहुत इन्वोक किया जाएगा, कि जैसे कि कोई क्लासिकल अथॉरिटी का नाम बताओ, जैसे कि होरेस ने कहा था ऐसे ऐसे ऐसे। तो वो यूजुअली बिना किसी और किसी क्लासिकल डिफेंस के कोई क्लेम्स नहीं करेंगे। और तीसरा बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, बहुत ही फार फेज्ड नेचुरल मेटाफर्स होंगे, बहुत ही फैब्रिकेटेड, कॉमन नेचुरल्स फील नहीं करें, वो कॉमन मेटाफर्स फील नहीं करें, वो काफी फार फेज्ड मेटाफर्स होंगे। एनाटॉमी ऑफ विट से एग्जांपल देखते हैं। ऑफ मोर विट देन वेल्थ, yet of more wealth than wisdom. This person has more wit than they have wealth, but they have more wealth than they have wisdom. So they do not have a lot of money, they have some wisdom and they have a lot of wit. Now जो wit का मतलब होता है cleverness essentially. Now what you need to know here, इसकी जो लिली का टेक था विट के ऊपर, वो ये था कि विट इज गुड एंड हेल्पफुल, but wit at the same time is dangerous, right? It can put you in situations, it can be used for bad things. ये एक इंपॉर्टेंट लाइन है, इसमें हम नेचुरल मेटाफर्स देख सकते हैं। एज अ सी क्रैब स्विमथ ऑलवेज अगेंस्ट द स्ट्रीम, so wit always striveth against wisdom. Wit always goes against wisdom, the way sea crab swims against the stream, right? So this is one clause, this is another clause, similar length. And as the bee is oft time hurt with her own honey. Now when have you seen a bee hurt by her own honey? I don't know. So is the wit not seldom plagued by his own conceit, right? So this, you see the balance, structure, antithesis, natural metaphors, right? Give me a thumbs up if you see it. Now some important things that some important lines that have endured from Euphues' Anatomy of Wit is, all is fair in love and war, in love and war. This is from Anatomy of Wit. And as the best wine doth make the sharpest vinegar, so the deepest love turneth to deadliest hate. That as best wine makes the best vinegar, most strong vinegar, deepest love turns into the deadliest hate. Now this is again balanced, as you can see. Yeah, this balance is important. So this is one clause, this is other clause. Both clauses are of similar length, and they are they have a balance. Now moving on to the university bit. So I told you that in the interlude tradition, we had a lot of professional companies of actors, right? Professional troops. Now there were some people who were educated at the universities. At the universities, they learned the classical playwrights, and then they become playwrights for these companies, and they write different plays from interludes. They write plays about a proper hero in the classical sense, right? They were professionals in the sense that these people were educated and these people were making money from their work. Very often they also wrote pamphlets to make money. By the way, this is something you need to know. It was marriage of the academic and the popular. Academic is their classical education, popular is the interludes. Interludes and also mystery morality plays. They took academic rule-bound structures of the University of Classical Drama and grafted them on the crude, energetic forms of native theatre. This is where how we get Dr. Faustus. And eventually this is how we get William Shakespeare. Give me a thumbs up if you understand that. They used the blank verse, right? They elevated the blank verse. So this guy in the Renaissance, this guy, Henry Howard, he introduced the blank verse to the English sonnet structure. Sorry, he introduced the blank verse to English language and the English sonnet structure, which is the sonnet structure that Shakespeare uses. He introduced the blank verse in his translation of the Aeneid. Anyway, so they use blank verse with a lot of power. They become the best users of blank verse to an extent. Right? Give me 1 second. Yeah. They were led by Christopher Marlowe. They elevated the blank verse into the premier dramatic medium, which remains till the even till the new classical age. They use the blank verse very often, and very often their plays were complex. They were not as simple as the morality and medical plays, and their heroes were tragic in their tragedies, and they're consumed by a lot of transgressive desires, things that they're not supposed to do. Now, at the time, why this happened was because Elizabethan economy had a lot of university graduates, but there were not enough jobs. So these people were very well educated. They did not have jobs, so they started traveling with these theater troops, writing plays for them. And because they were so free, they also did things which were not nice, right? Like drinking a lot, like engaging in prostitution, and so on. So this made them into bohemians of some kind. They were very often scandalous, all of them. Now the university wits, you need to know their names, is Christopher Marlowe, who wrote Dr. Faustus, Tamerlane the Great, two parts, Edward II, the Jew of Malta. Thomas Kidd, who was not university trained but was associated with the group. He wrote the very famous revenge tragedy, the Spanish tragedy. Robert Greene, who wrote Friar Bacon and Friar Bungie. Thomas Nash, who wrote The Unfortunate Travel and The Isle of Dogs. And then there are George Peele and Thomas Lodge. Right, so this is the list of university wits that I need you to remember. Right, that's kind of important. We have talked about university wits in a lot of detail in our lectures. Right, you can get our record lectures if you are not one of our students already. Now you know what happened around this time. Very interesting thing. The university wits wrote these plays. The university wits wrote these plays. They became immensely popular. But there was a new kind of a writer. These were the writers who were earlier actors. So actors were not paid a lot of money, right? The theater company got money. Actors were not paid a lot of money. So actors were supposed to be of lower classes. Not like right now where we look at actors as very rich people. Back then, actors were of lower classes. Now, some actors learned from the university wits, but because they were not classically trained, their plays were more closer to the real life. And one of these actors was William Shakespeare, who joined as an actor, learned from the university wits and their followers, and started writing his own plays. Now, there's a wonderful text which is Robert Greene's deathbed tract called Greene's Groat's Worth of Wit. This is the first reference to William Shakespeare, and it is not a good reference. Trust them not, for there is not an upstart crow beautified with our feathers. For there is an upstart crow, and this upstart crow, which is a derogatory way to talk about Shakespeare, is Shakespeare. Right? For there is an upstart crow beautified with our feathers, with that his tiger's hat, and with his tiger's heart wrapped in player's hide. Supposes he is well able to bombast out a blank verse as the best of you, and being an absolute Johannes factotum in his own conceit, the only Shake scene in the country. That's why we think it's about Shakespeare. He thinks that he's so cool that everybody loves him. That's the Shake scene. Tiger's heart wrapped in player's hide is a reference to Shakespeare's own, I think, Henry the Eighth play. Or Henry the Seventh, I think it's Henry the Eighth only, I don't remember, or Henry the Sixth. There's a line called tiger's heart wrapped in a deer's hide or something. So he's referring to Shakespeare's line as well, right? So we know this is about Shakespeare. He said this is a player means an actor, right? This is an actor who's pretending to be a poet, right? Poets are great, by the way. Actors are bad, poets are great. He's an actor pretending to be a poet. And being an absolute Johannes factotum means jack of all trades. That's literally what it means, jack of all trades. Being a jack of all trades because he can act, he can write, write verse, he can write songs. He thinks he's the greatest writer. Now the plays before the works of the university wits were very often rhyming plays. In Tamerlane the Great, in the prologue of Tamerlane the Great, so the prologue would be like an advertisement for the Tamerlane the Great. Marlowe announces that we are going to reject barbarous rhyming. Who else called rhyming barbarous? John Milton. John Milton said that rhyming is the product of a barbarous age. He rejected barbarous rhyming and he said that our blank verse is majestic. From jigging veins means a rhyming meter. So rhyming verse. From jigging veins of rhyming mother wits. Mother wits means wits who are just born and not educated. As and such conceits as clownage keeps in pay, and they get money because they use a lot of clownage, the stupidity on the stage, will lead you to the stately tent of war. We'll move away from these things towards the stately tent of war. Give me a thumbs up if you are able to follow this. So I know that you guys are listening and I'm not talking to the void. Now the Elizabethan school is basically the high Renaissance, right? This happened under Queen Elizabeth the First, and there is a lot of nationalistic pride because that's the kind of Queen Elizabeth was. Elizabeth had a really good way of rallying the nation. A lot of religious stability because right after the Reformation there was political and religious stability, a lot of expansion, and a lot of humanist curiosity into the human. So what do we find in Elizabethan school? We find lofty idealism and earthy realism. So there is philosophical idealism. They would talk about what it means to love, what is actual politics, what is statecraft, what is a good king, what is beauty. They'll talk about all of these things while always being realistic. Right? They believe that aim of poetry or literature is to teach and delight. Right? So teach and delight is also called didactic pleasure. Didacticism is teaching, pleasure is delight. And they learned this from Horace, right? From Horace, the Roman critic. They use the power of the vernacular, which means they use the language which was actually used, right? So, for example, the Spenserian stanza A B A B B C B C C D C D E E. The Shakespearean stanza is A B A B C D C D E F E F G G. So the difference between Spenserian and Shakespearean sonnet is that the last rhyme continues into the first rhyme of the next stanza. So it's an interlocked the kind of a rhyming. The well-known writers, of course, are Shakespeare, Spenser, and Sidney. This we have talked about, but we'll talk about it again. In Apology for Poetry, he says that the aim of a poet is to teach and delight, and I'll just read it. Poesy, therefore, is an art of imitation, for so Aristotle termeth it in his word mimesis. That is to say, a representing, a counterfeiting, or figuring forth. To speak metaphorically, a speaking picture. To this end, with this end, to teach and delight. Now he says that poetry even makes the world of nature better. He says, nature never set forth on earth in so rich tapestry, set forth the earth in so rich tapestry as diverse poets have done. Right? They make the world better. They think about what should be instead of what is. Now moving on to the Spenserian school, Edmund Spenser was a very important poet, and a whole group of poets were deeply influenced by him. Now, this is 17th century, early 17th century, right, 1590 to 6050, who self-consciously imitated the style, moral philosophy, and allegorical method of Edmund Spenser. Allegorical poem of Edmund Spenser is The Fairy Queen. There's a lot of allegory and pastoralism in these works. Allegory, of course, when you tell one story to tell another story. You tell the story of a dragon and a little goat, where I'm the dragon and Dhananjay is the goat, so it's an allegory for me and Dhananjay. Pastoralism is the fact that they wrote pastorals, which means set in idyllic rural landscapes, often spoken by a shepherd. They had complex stanzas like the Fairy Queen stanza, right? And they have archaisms. Archaisms are important. When Spenser was writing Fairy Queen, if you have read Fairy Queen, you will see that the spellings in Fairy Queen are different from his own sonnets. Because in the Fairy Queen, he was self-consciously copying the vocabulary of Chaucer and devotional anatomy. Right? They wanted to look at the world. They sought to use Spenserian romance to explore deeply introspective, scientific, and theological self-knowledge. Right here, anatomy is self-knowledge. Important writers are Phineas Fletcher, who wrote The Purple Island, Giles Fletcher the Younger, who wrote Christ's Victory and Triumph, William Brown of Tavistock, who wrote Britannia's Pastorals, and George Withers, The Shepherd's Hunting. You may not have heard of these writers, they are minor, but they are still important. I don't think we need to talk about these things, although I'd like to, but Now, another thing that was prevalent in the Renaissance is the Senecan tragedy. So, Seneca was a writer in the Roman times. That his name is Lucius Annaeus Seneca. He wrote very violent, very bloody tragedies, which became in the Elizabethan and the Jacobean time the revenge tragedy. Now, the revenge tragedies had themes of stoicism under stress. That even though there is a lot of stress over you, a lot of stress here is not that I have to record a lecture today, but stress is a stress of death. Right? There's a lot of catastrophe, a lot of moral distress, a lot of danger. And the hero of this play, these kind of plays of Senecan tragedies or revenge tragedies, will try to be stoic. The best example is Duchess of Malfi, who even in when everything happens says, "I am the Duchess of Malfi still." She takes charge of situation. She does not give in to the misery. There is revenge machinery. So there are 5 acts driven by devices. Right. So first, revenge machinery includes 5 acts, right, which they learn from Seneca. The machinery that they use are supernatural ghosts which demand vengeance. Think of Hamlet. Think of Spanish tragedy. There is psychological madness. There is also feigned or fake madness, someone pretending to be mad. Again, think of Hamlet. There is incest. Think of Hamlet. And a lot of bloodshed. Again, think of Hamlet. Hamlet is a revenge tragedy. And there's a lot of rhetorical splendor and violence. Right? So the language is going to be very powerful, very moralizing. Very often, the violence of the scenes are also reflected in the language. Important writers, as you already know, is Thomas Kidd's Spanish tragedy. William Shakespeare's Titus Andronicus is an early text. It's the most obvious revenge tragedy of William Shakespeare. Hamlet is a revenge tragedy, but it's also so much more. Yes, Karthika. Thomas Middleton's The Revenger's Tragedy. Now, in the Spanish tragedy, he crafts Hieronymo's ironic, guilt-stricken soliloquy of madness followed by the murder of his son. Right? Hieronymo kills his son, and he gives a soliloquy. The son's name is Horatio, and we are going to read this. Right? This is going to be rhetorical. O eyes, no eyes, but fountains wrought with tears. O life, no life, but lively form of death. Right? It's a very rhetorically powerful lines. O world, no world, but mass of public wrongs, confused and filled with murder and misdeeds. O sacred heavens, that if this unhallowed deed, killing of his son, if this inhuman and barbarous attempt, if this incomparable murder thus of mine, but now no more my son, shall unrevealed and unavenged pass. So if this goes without revenge, how shall we term your dealings just? God, how shall we call your dealings just if you unjustly deal with those that in your justice trust? Right, so he believes that the act of revenge is godly. Now, around this time, particularly in the Jacobean era, we have Baroque literature. Baroque literature has a very obvious ornamentation. Right, they try to be very beautiful. They try to use very high literary style. Like this is late 16th and early 18th century. Now they tried to be a bridge between the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, and they were shaped by the anxieties of Reformation and Counter-Reformation, which means uh, instability. And because of this instability, the works in the Baroque literature usually show a society which is out of joint. Out of joint is a reference to Hamlet. Hamlet says time is out of joint. Right? So there's a lot of tension, a lot of intensity. In Baroque literature, and you will see examples and you might be a little bit surprised, there is concertismo. This is where we get the word metaphysical conceit. Concertismo is a far-fetched, complicated metaphor. And there's a lot of emblematic art. Basically, there are certain things which will be emblematic of certain things which occur in the right, so some kind of symbols. There is theatricality and illusion. They looked at the world as a sacred theater and used a lot of illusions, like akin to trompe oil ceilings. I don't know, but how they did it in play. But these ceilings are actually the Italian Renaissance paintings, which are painted on the ceilings like a Sistine Chapel, and they're painted in such a way that it looks 3D. So the illusions probably would be painting or putting props on the stage, making something squirt out of somebody as blood when they are stabbed, right? Those kind of illusions. There was a lot of deformity, right? Characters were deformed, ideas were deformed, because they believed that world itself is deformed, right? World is out of joint. Important examples is John Milton's Paradise Lost, George Herbert's the Temple and the World, right? The Temple is the collection, and John Donne's Holy Sonnets and his religious verse are baroque in nature. Now, mannerism uh, is something that we see in paintings mostly. It is trying to mitigate the balance between the contrast between Renaissance and Baroque. Renaissance was all about symmetry, right? When I say Renaissance was about symmetry, think about the Mona Lisa. Right? Renaissance art is about capturing the world. To capture the world, you have to be very symmetrical. You literally have to measure everything. Right? Whereas Baroque was about excess. Right? The Mannerists tried to subvert the classical rules. Right? We won't talk a lot about this, but John Webster is a Baroque writer. See, the Baroque issue with Baroque is that it's mostly paintings, right? So this doesn't quite translate. You probably have not heard of Mannerism as a literary movement. Another school, important school, is the metaphysical school. Like, let me see when we are supposed to do the quiz. Okay, now it's time to do another quiz now. Give me a thumbs up if you want to do a quiz, and give me a thumbs down if you want us to just continue. Thumbs up for quiz, thumbs down for continue. Thumbs up. Nitpriya. Also, let's do the quiz on interludes to mannerisms. Give me 1 second. I'm opening the quiz. You'll see it in a second, guys. And here it is. Can you see the quiz? You can. Which character in Haywood's The Play of the Weather is celebrated as the first character explicitly designated as Vice in English theatre history? Imagination, Hicks Corner, Merry Report, or Ambidexter? Who is it? Nithpriya, it's not A. We talked about it briefly. I brought you guys' attention to this. Who will tell me? Datta, very good. It's C. It's Merry Report. Right, look at this. Is identified as the first character as called Vice. Right, moving on. Giles Fletcher, the youngest Christ's Victory heavily influenced Milton's Paradise Lost. Oh, this we did not talk about, but this is important. He wrote a poem called Christ's Victory and Triumph, which heavily inspired Paradise Regained. Not Paradise Regained, Paradise Lost. Okay, so this is wrong. Fletcher employed 8 line Spenserian variant stanza ending in an Alexandrian triplet, rhyming ABA, BB, CCC. This is also true. There was a triplet in Fletcher, or I could be wrong. So it should be A is incorrect and R is correct, unless Paradise Regained was also influenced by him. Sorry. So this should be the answer. Okay, so Paradise Regained was also influenced by Christ's Victory and Triumph, right? But Paradise Regained is not in this stanza, so it's not the correct reason. Moving on. The famous passage containing the first historical reference to William Shakespeare as an upstart cow appears in which work? Who will tell me? Uh, Nithpri has said D, which is correct. Sorry, Datta has said D, which is correct. Green's goat worth of wit attributed to Green. Please remember this. This is very cool, and this has not been asked in a long time. So this is something they could ask, and it would be a good question to ask, right? Match the following authors and their works. Now, I do not know this. I know this is Fletcher the Younger. I think Britannia's Purple Island is Phineas Fletcher. I don't know. Do you guys know? I'm very bad with memorization, right? As you guys must know if you follow Literary Odyssey. Who will tell me? Kartika has said A. A was Kartika, was that for the previous question? Oh, it is correct. Very good, Kartika. Very good, Datta. You guys are getting questions right. That makes me feel really good. Which of the following best describe the rhetorical technique enargia emphasized by the Renaissance humanists? This is also a question you can get asked because they're asking question from allied subjects a lot, like linguistics, right? So rhetoric is also an aligned subject. We had a whole, by the way, lecture, I think 4 hours lectures on rhetoric taken by one of the educators, Sheshav. It is on the site. So what is the answer of this? You guys don't know? It is vivid description, right? Vivid description to reconstruct realities and move emotions, right? This is where we get the realistic. Datta, no, it's not C. It is. This was C, employing antithesis and isocolon for balanced sentences, euphuism, right, by John Lilly. Moving on, arrange the following orders in the chronological order. Now, I will not be able to do this, but I think Paradise Lost should be last, which it is in three of them. Uh, so let's think about it. Fulgens and Lucrece, unless I'm mistaken, is a is a is a is a Spencerian school, right? I could be wrong. I think D should be at the end. Spanish tragedy should be somewhere in the beginning. Euphues should be after this. So B, A, and C, D, something like that. Okay, so B, C, B, A, D. It could be this. What do you guys think? Kartika said B. I'll go with what you have said, Kartika. Oh, it's C, A, B, D. Okay. Fulgens and Lucrece is first, then Euphues, the Anatomy of Wit, then the Spanish Tragedy, and then the Paradise Lost. Chronology is my weakness. So where is this line from? By the way, you are also getting these kind of questions. Thomas More's Utopia is an important prose work, and the prose questions you are getting a lot. So this could be a question. This something like this is something you could get. For if you suffer your people to be ill-treated and their manners be corrupted from their infancy, and then punish them for those crimes to which their first education disposed them, What else is to be concluded from this? But that you first make thieves and then punish them. Where is this from? C? No, that's not from C, Nitpriya. It's from Sir Thomas More's Utopia. Yes, Karthik, it's from B. You can look at the explanation. Which of the following is which of the following is identified as the earliest purely secular play in English? We did not talk about this. So, do you guys know? It should be in the interludes, right? Let me check. Yeah, so which is it? Nitpriya said D. Very good, Nitpriya. That is correct. So it is Fulgence and Lucrece is the earliest surviving secular play in English. Remember that, right? Even I forgot this one. Moving on, which of the following statements about Baroque literature are correct? It is characterized by a dense concetismo, using far-fetched conceits and complex metaphors. It viewed the world as theatrum sacrum, sacred theater. It flourished exclusively during the 15th century. Now, exclusively already tells me it's not correct, right? C is not going to be one of the options. Writers delight in hyperbole and coupling binary opposites, rejected all forms of rejected intensity and spiritual. E is also correct. E and C are incorrect. So it's A, B, and D, right? The aphorism "all is fair in love and war" originates from which work? I'll let you guys answer this. Very good, Nitpriya. Yes, Nitpriya, it's B. It's Euphues' Anatomy of the Wit. Moving on, identify the odd one out among the following associated with the Spencerian school. Thomas Nash is a university wit. In the prologue to Tamerlane the Great, Marlowe announces rejection of jigging veins of rhyming mother wits in favor of which dramatic form? This you must know, majestic blank verse. Mannerist literature relies on highly sophisticated contrivances where conventional cliches are transformed into protective masks. This happens in Mannerism. Mannerist works, the formal text often fails to correspond to the underlying psychology of characters who long for self-possession and escape from vulnerability. Ishita is saying C. Is it for the same or it's not for the same question? I think it should be A. I'll read the explanation. Mannerist literature does rely on sophisticated contrivances and cliches, where cliches become protective masks. Reason this masking occurs is precisely because the formal text fails to correspond to the underlying psychology of characters who long for self-possession and escape from vulnerability. Alright, good Nithri, I'd say. 14th, Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey, credited with introducing two significant formal innovations to English poetry. What are they? Yes, blank verse and the Shakespearean sonnet. O eyes, no eyes, but fountains fraught with tears. O life, no life, but lively form of death. O world, no world, but mass of public wrong. This exemplifies the Senecan tragedy. This is from Thomas Kidd's. So with that, we're done with the quiz. Now you guys tell me one thing. Do you guys want us to continue or are you tired? Because we've been here 2 hours, I can continue. We can go for I guess 10 more, and so in 2 hours we were able to cover what we are up to metaphysicals, right? No, we had not done metaphysicals. So we have done 21. So we are midway. Should we continue or should we do it? Take it up tomorrow or day after? We have learned a lot. We looked at a lot of important texts. We looked at a lot of important movements. I'm sure there were things that you did not know, right? Tomorrow, Nithpriya, what about others? What do others think? Yes, Ria, this PDF will be shared in the group. Urmila wants to continue. What about other? I need more votes to tell me if you want to do more of this. Karthik wants to continue, so one more vote. Now we are at a tie between tomorrow and continue. One final vote, and that will be what we do. No one wants to cast the final vote. Come on, guys. Okay, so I think we'll do. Uh, Let me show you the screen. Wait. What's coming is the metaphysical school, the Jacobean tragedy, Jacobean comedy, Sons of Ben, and the Cavalier school. Right? We'll enter neoclassicism. Almost enter neoclassicism. Let me actually check what the next quiz is. If the next quiz is not very long, like we don't have to cover a lot for the next quiz, then we'll just continue. If the next quiz is a little bit longish, then we are going to do it tomorrow. Right? That's how you do, because nobody is voting. So next quiz is metaphysical to heroic drama. So that would be, if we are here right now, it will be up to 29. So we can do this. I think we can do it. It's not a lot. So let's talk about the metaphysical school now. You already know metaphysical poets a little bit. When we talked about Baroque, I told you about the conceits. So they revolted against the sweet, free-flowing conventions of Elizabeth love poetry. That both the words are important: sweet and free-flowing. Sweet means again that the it sounds sweet, right? One day I wrote her name upon the strand, but came the waves and washed it away. This is from Spenser's Amority. So this sounds nice. Whereas the metaphysical poetry, it doesn't sound nice as such. If you remember, they are a lot, very oftentimes, intellectual argument, right? They are highly intellectual. They are argumentative. They have less sentiment, although they're like full of love. They have less sentiment and more argument. The metaphysical conceit is concetismo, which we studied a second ago, which is a far-fetched comparison of two heterogeneous ideas, right? Like comparing an architect's compass to a flea to love. Right? Discordia concords, which means there is combination of dissimilar images, discovery of occult resemblances in things apparently unlike. That you find similar things in things which are otherwise unlike. This definition is by Dr. Samuel Johnson, and he says that these poets yoked these ideas together with violence. The ideas came from astronomy, cartography, philosophy, alchemy, and they merged these disciplines with intense human passion. And they had a dramatic style, right? They very often had conversations. The known poets, as you already know, are John Donne. His poems are Valediction, Forbidden Morning, The Sun, The Canonization, and more. The Flea, which was referenced earlier. George Herbert, who wrote Temple, Altar, Easter Wings. George Herbert is also known for concrete poetry, right? Which is poetry which is written in the shape of something. Like his Easter Wings is in the shape of an angel's wings. The altar is in the shape of an altar. Andrew Marvell, who wrote Definition of Love, and to his coy mistress. Now, to look at this yoking together violence, we'll look at this famous metaphor from A Valediction, Forbidden Morning by John Donne, where he compares the compass to the lovers. If they be two, they are two, so as swift twin compasses are two. Like if the lovers are two different people, they are two in the way that compass needles are different, right? So they are two needles, but they are connected in a higher plane. Thy soul, the fixed foot, makes no show to move, but doth if other do. So if you put a compass and move it, the fixed foot does not seem to move, but it does move. And though it in the center sit, yet when the other far doth roam, it leans and hearkens after it. Though it sits in the center, when the farther foot, which is this one, when this moves, it leans and hearkens after it. And grows erect as it comes home. And as it comes home, it grows erect. It gets bent when the other foot is after, and when they come together, they grow erect. The sexual imagery is going to be present in John Donne. Right? In The Sun, he asserts a lot of things. He says, busy, old, fool, unruly son, why dost thou thus through windows and through curtains call on us? So this assertive and confident voice is also very dominant in the metaphysical poetry. So if you get a line to identify, assertion and confidence is metaphysical poetry. Also think about Flea, right? He's so confident about it. Another example of mathematics being merged with the idea of love is in the Definition of Love by Andrew Marvell. As lines, so loves oblique may well themselves in every angle greet. Like oblique lines, this is parallel lines, these are oblique lines. Oblique loves, which are baser loves, everyday love, and oblique lines, they meet at a point. But are so truly parallel, but our love is so parallel, though infinite can never meet. Like parallel lines, if you stretch them infinitely, they will never meet. Moving on to the Jacobean revenge tragedy. After the death of Queen Elizabeth I, a lot of things were happening, right? They did not, the new king was King James. Around that time, when Queen Elizabeth was still alive, they did not know who will be the next king. So the idea of court and what statecraft is was very important, and that's why they really looked at the ideas of systemic corruption, ideas of absolute power, and moral decay, which is something they found all around them. Right? For that, they turn to Italian courts. They believe Italian courts were corrupt. The body politic, which is basically the political institutions, are rotten. A lot of macabre imagery. So there's a lot of blood, a lot of torture, a lot of incest, right, in these plays. And there is cynical malcontent. Malcontent is a character uh, who is dissatisfied with the world, and often has to do things that they don't want to do. They're often complaining. That's a malcontent. Right? In Jacobean tragedies, the malcontent was often forced to do the corrupt deed for the powerful nobility, right? Just to survive. The best example is Basola, from Duchess of Malfi. Examples of Jacobean tragedy are Duchess of Malfi and The White Devil by John Webster. We have a whole lecture on these. And Middleton's The Revenger's Tragedy, right? The revenge tragedies were also very prominent in this. In Webster Duchess of Malfi, the cynical malcontent is Basola introduces the corrupt cardinal and duke. Right? Cardinal is religious institution, duke is political institution, and he uses a metaphor. He and his brother are like plum trees that grow crooked over standing pools. They're like a plum tree, which is surrounded by a pool. They are rich, so they have fruit, so they have power, they have everything. But none but crows, pies, and caterpillars feed on them because there is water, nobody can feed on them. Right? Only the people in their circles can feed on their power. When Ferdinand orders Basola to kill the Duchess, he kills her and he says this very famous line: "Cover her face, mine eyes dazzle. Sorry, she died young." And Duchess of Malfi shows what? She shows stoic Christianity when she is faced with all the suffering. She says, "Pull and pull strongly." But then she's being strangled right now, right? "Pull and pull strongly, for your able strength must pull down heaven upon me. Yet stay, the heaven gates are not so highly arched as princes' palaces. They that entered there must go upon their knees." She says, "Okay, I'm going to heaven, but the gates of heavens are not so high arched like the palaces." So basically saying the prince's palaces or courts are not like heaven. They are vain, they are corrupt, and they are ungodly. Because if you want to enter the gate of heaven, because it's so low, you have to go on your knees. So you have to be humble. Now, Jacobean city comedy was very satirical, and of course, realistic. Comedy is often realistic, and it was set in London, and focused on the lives of and ambitions of various everyday people instead of mythological kings. And very often, by focusing on their lives, they attacked the contemporary London culture. Next, the cash nexus and greed. So there was a lot of commercialization in these plays. There was a lot of market. If you remember The Alchemist, right? There's the guy has a whole business by being a fraud. If you remember Volpone, where there are a lot of merchants who are involved in the story. There's a lot of cuckoldry. There's the whole marriage market. There's a lot of double entendres, which is double meaning things. They say things which are simple, but they have a hidden dirty and meaning. And usually there is no moral resolution. Right? There is very often the tricksters, the people who are bad, they survive. Right? The important texts are Thomas Middleton's A Chaste Maid in Cheapside, Ben Jonson's The Alchemist and Every Man in His Humor, and John Marston's The Dutch Courtesan. Now, in prologue to The Alchemist, Johnson explicitly says that we are writing about London, and why he's writing about London, he describes here. Our scene is London, cause we would make known. No country's mirth is better than our own. No country's mirth is enjoyment and fun is better than our own, but it is also ironic, because it's a satirical play, right? He's trying to attack vices. So no country is better than London. No clime breeds better matter for your whore, bawd, squire, impostor, many persons more. Now he's clearly saying that no country is better suited for these people. Whose manners, now called humors, feed the stage. Humors are those four humors we have talked about in our Chaucer lecture. Now this is from Middleton's A Chaste Maid in Cheapside. Chaste maid in a place in a red light area. Basically, this person, Allwit, Allwit is going to deliver this line. He's going to say that world is such a place where nobody wins except the powerful. There is no gamester like the politics sinner. So people who are in the politics and corrupt. For whoever plays with this game maker, only box is the true winner. It's basically saying when you play in the casino, casino always wins. Now, sons of Ben or the tribe of Ben were people who believed Ben Jonson to be their poetic father. They learned a lot from Ben Jonson, right? These are 17th century writers. They fought the classical discipline. If you remember, Ben Jonson is one of the neoclassical writers or a classicist, right? They were against, of course, the free-flowing romantic excess of the Elizabethans. We have talked about this before. They had procreative lineage, so they believed that we are uh, directly extending what Ben Jonson was doing. Right? We are his children. We are trying to transmit his classical craft, his wit, and his discipline. And the texts were urban and they were social satire. They were set in cities and they were about satire. Right? Ben Jonson is the model. His epigrams is the Underwood. Robert Herrick wrote Hesperides, and Thomas Carey wrote elegant lyric poetries and elegies. Remember, these are uh, uh, often poems. One example is To the Virgins to Make Most of Time by Robert Herrick, who demonstrates Johnsonian balance of lyrical grace with a classical theme. Right, this theme of carpe diem is a classical theme. Gather ye rosebuds while ye may, old time is still a flying. And this same flower that smiles today, tomorrow will be time. That time is passing away. You need to gather ye rosebuds, which means you need to indulge in pleasure. The Cavalier School were a group of people who followed King Charles I, right, during the English Civil War. They also had the carpe diem ethos. The same idea here, that carpe diem means seize the day. Like, because there is a lot of political instability. If the civil war is lost, then we'll be thrown out of the country. So if we are in such an unstable time, why not just seize the day, do whatever you want, have fun, have pleasure. They had very lyrical lines, very beautiful lyrical lines, as we will see in a second. And they talked about gallantry and honor. Right? They talked about honor in the way see, honor is interesting because in the civil war there are two sides. One side supports the king, and the qualities associated with the king related quote are honor, gallantry, and all of those things. Gallantry is this knight or aristocratic values. So these themes are also politically aligned with their side, the side that they have taken. Cavaliers are Richard Lovelace, who wrote To Althea from Prison, to Lucasta Going to Wars; Robert Herrick, who wrote Hesperides; John Suckling, who wrote A Ballad Upon a Wedding; and Thomas Carew, who wrote A Rapture. We have read this line already. John Suckling captures the light-hearted, cynical wit that Cavaliers. Remember, Cavaliers were always light-hearted, right? So he says, "Why so pale?" It's about the anxieties of a unrequited love. So he's talking to someone whom they love doesn't love them back. As instead of saying that anything serious, they just make fun of them. Why so pale and wan, fond lover? Why do you look so sick, fond lover? Prithee, why so pale? Will when looking well can't move her? Will looking ill prevail? Prithee, why so pale? When you were looking good, when you were healthy, she did not like you. Will she like you now? Now that you look sick? Moving on to Caroline drama. This is drama written during the reign of King Charles I. This ends with in 1642. So what you need to know is that 1642 is the closing of theatres. So before the closing of theatre, this is the drama that prevailed, and James Shirley is one of the last major playwrights to write before the theatres are closed. They wrote a lot of tragic comedies, right? They wrote about the political tension which is going on, and in their text, the women get a lot of agency, which is new, right? Women are frequently depicted as moral judges who use their verbal liberty to challenge the corrupt aristocratic privilege. We'll look at this. Shirley, who is supposed to be the last major playwright after the closing of theatre, wrote Hyde Park, in which the heroine Julietta fends off the sexual advances of Lord Bonville, and she says, "Unless you prove a friend to virtue, were your honor centupled," means increased by 100 times, "yet I in such infinite distance am as much above you in my innocence." That even if you had as much virtue, even if you have 100 times more virtue and more honor, here is power, I will still be above you in my innocence, right? You cannot buy me, essentially. This is the first liberty I ever took to speak myself. This is the first time I'm speaking for myself, right? So they're acknowledging the fact that women did not have a voice. I have been bold in comparison, but find not wherein I have wronged virtue, pleading for it. How have I broken virtue if I'm pleading for virtue? So I said the theaters close after this. So this was a time when there were a lot of debates happening whether theater is good or bad, right? And that debate was very, very intense. So in that debate, Philip Messenger, wrote a play called The Roman Actor, where he defends theater and says that theater can be ethical, right? They can have ethical teaching. This is the lines. I have once observed in a tragedy of ours in which a murder was acted to life, a guilty hearer, forced by horror of a wounded conscience to make discovery of that which torture could not wring off from him. So the character says that once I was watching a tragedy in which there is a murder which was so lifelike that in the audience there was a guilty person who had done a murder once. He was wounded in his conscience. He felt bad for who he is, right? And he felt morally guilty. And thing that torture could not make him confess to was confessed because of this play. Alright, moving on to Puritan literature. Puritan literature refers, of course, to the puritanical right. The Puritans were these religious people who believed in the writings of John Calvin. They did not believe in a lot of ornamentation of words. They did not like drama in general because it was when you one, drama corrupts because there is a reference to sex, there is reference to uh, courting, there's sometimes drunkenness in plays. Also, when you do a play, you take up a character, right? An actor is playing a character. When you play a character, according to Puritans, you are rejecting the identity God gave you. So they were very, very restricted, religiously speaking. They rejected the highly ornate style. They believed that plain style is enough. We'll look at a text on this. They wrote about internal spiritual struggle, that you are struggling in the world of flesh, in the world of desires. You are trying to rise above it to the sovereign grace of God. They were also typological, which means they refer to the Old and the New Testament, and their imagination was scriptural. Like, so a lot of things that they wrote were from the Bible. These are the writers. John Milton wrote Paradise Lost, Lycidas Areopagitica. John Bunyan wrote The Pilgrim's Progress. And Annie Bradstreet wrote devotional poetry. Annie Bradstreet is an American poet. So she's a Puritan who left England. So she's one of the earliest American poets, by the way. Now, why did they use plain style? Because John Calvin wrote this. A simple external manifestation of word ought to be amply sufficient to produce faith. So something which is said ekdam simply should be enough to make people believe. But such is the proneness of our mind to vanity that it can never adhere to the truth of God. Right? We are so prone to vanity that beautiful verses still attract us. Milton wrote a prose work called On the New Forces of Conscience Under the Long Parliament. So the war has been won, civil war has been won. Now the Puritans are ruling the government, and he's going to attack the Puritans. He writes, the new presbyter is but old priest writ large. Presbyter is the religious head, the Puritan head. Is like old priest writ large. Old priest is the Catholic priest. He's like, it's the same but larger because he has a lot of political power too. Moving on to heroic drama. Heroic drama was the restoration. So after the Civil War, now Charles II is back. Which was written exclusively in heroic couplets, which means rhymed couplets, right? Iambic pentameter, which rhymes. They were about themes of personal honor, love, military conquest, and tragic friction between absolute sovereign duty and individual desire. Think of this as French influence, all of this, by the way, right? These are the things they learned from France. The protagonists were larger than life conquerors, right? They had a lot of pride. You'll see this in a second. Aurangzeb is one of the example. Conquest of Granada by the Spaniards is an example. And they're chivalrous ideals, right? Ideals of the knightly virtues. So examples again, John Dryden's drama is a drama of heroic drama. the conquest of Granada by Spaniards, and Aurangzeb. We can read this line from Aurangzeb, but I think like we are almost done only. So let's read. John Dryden, Conquest of Granada, says that his heroic protagonist Almanzor, remember this, Almanzor is the protagonist of Conquest of Granada. He says that the sovereign individual, or a person who's in control of himself, is a noble savage. I'm as free as nature first made man ere the base laws of servitude began. When wild in woods the noble savage ran. This is how free he imagined himself to be. So see how he's a larger than life conqueror, right? He's not an ordinary conqueror. In Aurangzeb, Aurangzeb's virtues tested against his father's romantic rivalry with his brother Murat's and his brother Murat's violent ambition. So in the play, Aurangzeb and his father both love the same woman, let me check. Let me give you the exact name. If somebody knows, please let me know. Her name is let me see. Indamora. Indamora. Indamora is the lover. IND here. Once more 'tis given me to behold your face, Aurangzeb is saying to his father, the best of kings and fathers to embrace. Pardon my tears, 'tis joy which binds them flow, a joy which never was sincere till now. Right? Uh, and Morat is a bad character here. Morat says, renown and fame and power as uncontrolled as is my will. He says, renown, fame, and power are uncontrolled, right? As my will is. And she says, how you confound desires of good and ill. For true renown is still with virtue joined. But lust for power, let's lose the unburdened mind. Yours is a soul irregularly great. So although you have renown, fame, and power, you are great irregularly, right? Because you have lust for power, right? And now let's go to the quiz. Are you guys able to follow? Are you guys having fun? Here is the quiz. This is very easy. Who described metaphysical poets' technique as combination of dissimilar images or discovery of occult resemblances in things apparently alike? It's Dr. Samuel Johnson, right? This we already know. Moving on. In Middleton's Chaste Maid, in Cheapside, who delivers there is no gamester like a politic sinner, who ere games the box is surely winner? Who says this? Do you remember? My neck has gone a little bit stiff. Once Literary Odyssey is a little bit bigger, we'll have a digital board. I think then you guys will have more fun too. I will have more fun too. You don't remember? It is Allwit. Allwit, a willfully cuckolded husband in Middleton's Chaste Maid in a Cheapside, delivers this line as cynical summation of urban corruption and survival. Sir Walter Whorehound is the knight who keeps Allwit's wife. So this guy. Yellowhammer is the goldsmith father. This guy. A Touchwood senior is a fertile gentleman who helps others conceive. Okay, moving on. Cavalier poets preferred smooth classical musicality in their verse. They drew their stylistic models from Horace, Catullus, Ovid rather than from John Donne. So we have not talked about this, but I think this is correct, right? Because they were writing after Donne's generation, and they went back to the classicals to write about classical influences are there, right? Revisit the lecture if you forget. Which of the following works was long attributed to Cyril Turner before being reassigned to Thomas Middleton by modern scholarship? This is the Revenger's Tragedy. Right, for a long time we believed Cyril Turner wrote it, but the modern scholarship says that it was written by Thomas Milton, which was the revenge tragedy. This was done on the basis of stylometric and linguistic evidence. Ki this sounds more like and looks more like Middleton. Paradise Lost is John Milton. Pilgrim's Progress is John Bunyan. Conquest of Granada is John Dryden. Petition is a War Whore is John Ford. So it would be A CABD. CABD, yeah. Dryden's conquest of Granada, Almanzor declares himself as free as the nature first made man. This established heroic protagonist as which archetypal figure? You guys answer this. Excuse me. C. That is correct, Datta. Which of the following is not a characteristic of Jacobean comedy? Satirical focus on London merchant and citizen, reliance on body, wit, and sexual double entendres, clear moral resolution, rewarding virtuous characters, cynical endings where clever tricksters prosper. C. Very good, Ria. New presbyter is but the old priest writ large. Is in which work by Milton? This is a very famous line, by the way. You are supposed to keep this in mind. Don't know? It's by On the New Forces of Conscience under the Long Parliament. Long Parliament was the Parliament of the Puritans. Identify the odd one out among the followings: Richard Lovelace, Sir John Suckling, George Herbert, Thomas Carew. C. George Herbert, because he's the metaphysical poet. The rest are cavaliers. In Andrew Marvell's The Definition of Love, what mathematical concept illustrates a perfect but unreachable love? It is parallel lines that can never meet. Which of the following statements about sons of Ben are correct? They championed classical Roman ideals of simplicity and restraint. They embraced irregular colloquial complexity of the metaphysical school. They viewed Johnson's instruction as a form of literary procreation. Their poetry valued polished, civilized discourse and social satire. They preferred flowing romantic access of the Elizabethans. C, BCE only. What do others think? Yes, Datta, it's B. A, C, and D. That they championed the Roman classical ideals. They embraced they viewed Johnson's instruction as a form of literary production, and they valued polished and civilized discourse. Cover her face, mine eyes dazzle, she died young. Who says these lines? From Duchess of Malfi. Basola, yes. Oh, it's Ferdinand. Wait. Oh, right, it is Ferdinand, right? He strangles the Duchess. He orders strangling the judges. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Arrange the following works in chronological order. The Alchemist, Pilgrim's Progress, Paradise Lost, Chase Made in the Cheap Side. Yeah, you guys will have to do this. I also surrendered, but I think Paradise Lost should be at the end. Uh, Ben Johnson, A B D C हो सकता है. It could be A. It could be A D B C. It could be this as well. It is A D C B. Okay. Oh, so Pilgrim's Progress comes after Paradise Lost. Oh, 1 year after Paradise Lost. Whatever, it's fine. Dates are not that important. Given that you cover other things properly. Messengers, the Roman actor, the player Paris defends the theater by arguing that a guilty spectator was once. Uh, Remember, this was by Paris, right? We talked about the dialogue. Forced by wounded conscience to confess his crime. Look at this. Puritans had championed a straightforward, unadorned plain style in their prose and poetry, which is true. They believed ornate courtly language was incompatible with the direct moral edification and absolute sincerity. Yet both are correct. So with that, we are done. Can you guys? Do you guys have any good doubts? Any doubts whatsoever? Any doubts, guys? Uh, Thank you, Udmila, for joining, for attending. Thank you, Karthika. I think then we are done. There are no doubts, it seems. Uh, for the students, I'll see you guys in the group chat in a second. I'll send you the document right away, and I'll see you guys in the next live stream. And of course, please do. Who is this good guy? My name is Shivesh. Shivesh sir. Please do the revision MCQs, right, for our students. It's very important that you do them regularly because there are a lot of the things that you don't come across or don't register. So doing a lot of revision MCQs is going to help you a lot. Also, finish the summary sheet, and if you have done the analysis that I asked you to do using AI, please send it to me on WhatsApp, and then we'll discuss what to do next. I would prefer it to be in a live session, but I guess that can take too much time for a lot of you as well. All right, so uh, let's end this here. Bye. I'll see you guys in the next one.